Good morning. Welcome to a special programme. We're live from Westminster for you today, the heart of political power at the minute in this country. But the man due to take the reins, though, succeeding Keir Starmer, is promising to shake up the political status quo to give more power to local government and the regions. Today, Andy Burnham will officially become the leader of the Labour Party, 1 month on from winning the Makerfield by-election and sending a message to his opponents that he's effectively been coronated with the backing of more than 400 MPs. Well, let's bring in our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, at this time, shall we? Sam, big day. What are we expecting?
It certainly is, Sophie. Welcome to central London, where in 2 hours' time, the transition of power formally begins. It's here in central London, not that far from where I'm standing now, that Keir Starmer will give way to Andy Burnham as Labour leader, a precondition to the second stage when Andy Burnham becomes Prime Minister. We'll see him in Downing Street at Monday lunchtime. A huge moment for Andy Burnham. He has been chosen as the next Labour leader by acclamation, by an overwhelming number and parts of the Labour Party. 379 of the 403 Labour MPs nominated Andy Burnham to be their next leader and Prime Minister. Just one MP decided that there were too many people sucking up to Andy Burnham and nominated a different candidate, herself, Catherine West, who backed Andy Burnham. Every single Labour-affiliated union has backed Andy Burnham, and so have all the socialist societies. So it is with that overwhelming mandate, that unity of the Labour Party in agreeing to change their leader and their faith they are putting in this man, the work starts at lunchtime today. In 2 hours' time, we will see a number of speeches. Lucy Powell, the deputy leader of the Labour Party. We will hear from Shabana Mahmood, who is the chair of the National Executive Committee and is also to be Andy Burnham's Chancellor. And then we will hear from the man himself. We've already got a flavour of the kinds of things he's going to say. He's going to talk about bringing back authentic Labour, a kind of rebuke there to Keir Starmer. He'll pay tribute to his predecessor, but he will say they need to get back to Labour values. It's a bit like a Leavers Assembly. Lots of people in the audience saying goodbye to Keir Starmer, but a notable absence is the current Prime Minister himself. He's still on his way back from Ukraine, so as they pay tribute to the work that he's done over the last 2 years as Prime Minister, the man himself won't be there.
And Sam, it's a kind of peculiarity, if you like, of our political system, where you can become Prime Minister, without having an election. In this case, without even running against anyone or having any hustings. So it feels like we don't know that much about what Andy Burnham could be like as Prime Minister. What are you picking up? What do you think we should expect?
My goodness, Sophie, you're completely right. Look, we're in a situation where Andy Burnham effectively has gained the crown uncontested. It's a coronation today. One person said it was a conclave. There wasn't even any sense of choice. From the moment he announced he was standing for the Makerfield by-election, he looked like the only person who could take over from Keir Starmer. And as you say, we do not know so much. Effectively, what's been going on, Sophie, is that he's run a campaign based, how can I put it, largely on vibes, not on specifics. Now, he talks about priorities, and he'll do so again at lunchtime, talk about how he wants to fix social care, for instance, something that he has been focused on for the last 16 years or so. He will talk about the need to take more control of public services, and I think and other key bits of infrastructure. I think we're particularly looking at what he might do with Thames Water. But what and how he will pay for it, and whether or not he will get the support of his own MPs in the future, well, they're all the questions that it turned out Keir Starmer couldn't answer. And we don't know that Andy Burnham is going to be able to answer them any better. For the last really couple of weeks, Andy Burnham has been holed up in Westminster with just a couple of senior aides, James Purnell, ex-Labour cabinet minister, and Louise Haigh, who really catapulted him into that seat in Makerfield and has been by his side ever since. And just that trio has been trying to thrash out who will be in the cabinet, what the direction of the government will be. Do they rewire Whitehall in order to do it? And how will they answer Andy Burnham's great promise of more devolution to the different regions of the United Kingdom? Answers come there none, because we don't know. We do not even know for certain what we think, which is that Shabana Mahmood, rather than Ed Miliband, will be appointed Chancellor on Monday. What does that mean for the economic direction of a Burnham premiership? We just don't know. Who will be in the other top jobs? We just don't know. Some believe that it is a stroke of genius that Andy Burnham has managed to keep key details of what he wants to do so tight, no leaks. That in itself is something of a triumph. Others worry that there is not a proper plan and that vibes alone aren't enough to govern.
Sam, thank you very much indeed. We're going to keep coming back to Sam, of course, as the day progresses. But in the meantime, we're joined by Kitty Donaldson, who is the chief political commentator at the iPaper. Also, I should say, one of the best connected journalists in Westminster, so we're very lucky to have her today. Sam was just saying that Andy Burnham's kind of had a vibes-based campaign so far. Do you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with that, and I've just written a piece saying the vibes need to stop and we need to get onto some proper policy. I think what we're seeing now is sort of inch by inch a direction of travel coming out. And, I mean, you talk to people in the Burnham camp and they say, well, it would look a bit presumptuous, wouldn't it? He's not been to see the King yet. He's not technically Prime Minister. You know, to start sort of announcing the cabinet would look, you know, a bit arrogant, actually. And you can see their point of view. But there are some clues. We think that Shabana Mahmood will be Chancellor of the Exchequer.
By the way, on that, I should say that you broke that story, right?
Yes, I did, yes, on Wednesday, yes. We broke that at the iPaper. And that's kind of interesting because it's already created this backlash in Labour, and you know, he's not even announced her yet. And the reason it's created a backlash is because of her politics, of course. And lots of people gearing up for Ed Miliband to be Chancellor. He was one of the kind of top three in the running for it. I think Wes Streeting, the former Health Secretary, was another one who they were thinking about. But there was this kind of concerted effort to stop Ed Miliband becoming Chancellor. And part of that was because of his views on net zero. And part of that was because of how he was seen when he ran the Labour Party. I think that was sort of turned out to be the more widespread view, that this was a guy who basically couldn't eat a bacon sandwich and therefore, you know, wasn't in the right place to be Chancellor. There's a backlash, of course, from supporters of Ed Miliband who say, well, look, he's the one with the Treasury experience, actually. He was an advisor to Gordon Brown. And Shabana Mahmood has got a very untested track record on the economy. Her advocates say, well, look, she's extremely bright. She won't spook the markets because she's seen as that part of the party. And also, you know, well, there's a bit of a gender thing going on here as well. We need a woman in at least one of the senior great offices of state. And, by the way, she's an extremely talented politician.
I think it's so interesting, the kind of battle, as you see it, between the Shabana Mahmood camp and the Ed Miliband camp. Because if you look at the range of people who backed Andy Burnham, I mean, it's amazing the range of MPs that backed him. And in some ways, that's incredible. He's united the party. But also, if you think that, you know, John McDonnell has backed this guy and so has Wes Streeting, you know, one of them is going to be disappointed here, right? You know?
Yeah. But do you not think that they could not have not backed him, right? Yeah. Like that kind of like that ship was there, right? That ship was in port, and if you look a bit churlish if you're kind of like the last person going, okay, you know, I back you, Andy. You're absolutely right, though. He manages to have sort of got all wings of the party together because of this vibes thing. Like, no one really knows what he thinks about things. And I was thinking back to the Makerfield by-election when there's an HQ up there in a social club, and they had this big piece of paper which had everyone's names on it. Everyone would sign their names when they came up to campaign for Andy Burnham. And I think what's going on is a sort of political equivalent of people writing their names on Andy Burnham now, saying, this is what I want, this is what you should do, this is what Burnhamism is. And I've spoken to lots of MPs in the last week, and some of them are saying, well, of course, Andy's going to do things for student loans, and he's going to do things for WASPy women, and he's going to do things on social care. I think Andy will do things on social care, but there's a lot of projecting going on because no one quite knows what he stands for.
Yeah, because he hasn't said, right? And like you say, that is understandable to a point, because he hasn't even become Labour leader yet. That's going to happen today, of course. He hasn't become Prime Minister yet. That's going to happen on Monday. So, yeah, it's right that he doesn't want to sound presumptuous. But by this point, we normally know an awful lot more about people who are about to be Prime Minister, don't we?
Well, yes, but usually they're tested during an election campaign. But you're right, this is a coronation, or as Sam had it, a conclave. And you're right, they've been working behind the scenes very furiously, actually. Every time I bump into someone from Andy Burnham's team, I say, can you chat? And they're like, no, don't be ridiculous. You know, they're clutching kind of 8 cans of Coke and going up to work on whatever the next thing is. Actually, I think it was Sprite they were clutching the other day. But anyway, they've been really busy, and Lou Haig, who was sacked from Keir Starmer's government, that was quite bitter, that fallout, has been working behind the scenes for about a year now to try and get her man back, you know, the person she thinks will be the best face of the Labour Party, and has succeeded. And she's now one of the most senior members of his government. I think she's going to be given a sort of beefed-up role of Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, which is one of those weird ceremonial titles, but actually means knocking heads together in Whitehall, bringing people together, making sure that Burnham's vision is enacted across government.
Kitty, thank you very much. Kitty's going to be staying with us for the rest of the day, which I'm very pleased about. But in the meantime, let's try and tell you a little bit more about Andy Burnham. Because, look, I'm sure you know the name. He's a household name. That is very, very clear. But I think it's fair to say that not all of us know the details of his 25-year rise to power. So we just wanted to take a moment and look back at his political career to date. So 2001, that's when we're taking you back to first. That's when he entered Parliament after becoming Labour MP for Lee in the general election. By 2005, he was then given a position in Tony Blair's government. Remember him? He was the Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State, so kind of lowest rung of the ladder. He was then appointed to Gordon Brown's cabinet in 2007, where he served as Chief Secretary to the Treasury. In 2008, he was then Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport. He got another promotion in June 2009. He was on the role of Health Secretary, which he then held until Labour was defeated in 2010. So really, I think, you know, just want to pause and reflect that people who are saying that this is an inexperienced politician is actually quite wide of the mark, right? He's held senior cabinet positions before. Shortly after that election, he then ran for the Labour leadership. He lost to Ed Miliband, who appointed him as Shadow Education Secretary. And he had another go in 2015, but this time he lost to Jeremy Corbyn. After a year serving in Jeremy Corbyn's shadow cabinet, Andy Burnham then announced he was going to stand to become Mayor of Greater Manchester. And in May 2017, he then won the race for Mayor of Greater Manchester with a whopping 63% of the vote. And this, I think, in many ways, is when the Andy Burnham we know was defined, right? You know, during his 9 years in that role, he was a very, very high-profile political figure, particularly, of course, during the pandemic. We all remember those clashes with Boris Johnson as well. But Manchesterism was born. He was then blocked from standing in the 2026 Gorton and Denton by-election, basically because Keir Starmer knew he was going to do exactly what he's done now, run against him. But then he was re-elected in the Makerfield by-election, and on 18th of June, he won the seat, becoming an MP once again, and launching his third bid for the Labour leadership. It's going to be third time lucky. Well, the Labour MP, Melanie On, joins us in the studio. Good to see you. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you.
So you're backing Andy Burnham, I'm guessing?
Yes, absolutely, yeah. Like just about everybody else in the PLP, yes.
And why are you backing him?
Well, it was time for a fresh start, and he is bringing a wealth of experience and also, critically, a perspective from the north. So I think that everything that he's been doing and saying since the by-election, trying to do politics differently. I saw that he was out on the street, sat waiting for people in Wales yesterday to come up and tell him what they wanted to see from him, is a really refreshing way to do politics and to demonstrate that he's not scared of seeing people in the flesh and hearing their views, positive and negative.
We were hearing from Sam Coates earlier, who was saying that Andy Burnham's ran a kind of vibes-based campaign so far, which is quite true, isn't it? I mean, there's not been that many specifics, has there? It's kind of sweeping statements of vision.
Yeah, well, fair enough, but I think that it's absolutely right to set a general direction of what you want to do, what makes your leadership different to what we've had before, and to avoid some of the... What do you think that is, then? Well, I will come on to that, but, I mean, to really avoid the the detail of policy, particularly when you're not in power yet, to avoid some of the difficulties, when you've got an existing cabinet and Prime Minister. And I think that he's been very clear about what he wants to do in terms of, rebalancing the economy of the country. I think that he has indicated that he wants to focus on things like social care. That's been something recent. There's a recognition that in that rebalancing of the economy of the country, making sure that places that have felt perhaps left behind in some ways, that we don't forget that we have still got engines of the country, and we've seen some of that in some of the appointments to the Lords and suggestions that perhaps directly elected mayors will go into the Lords and provide a real function around the importance of devolution.
And before I say this, I do want to acknowledge that, look, I get that he doesn't want to be presumptive here, right? He hasn't even become Labour leader yet, not least Prime Minister. But I just feel we haven't heard that much of Andy Burnham being scrutinised, right? And it's partly because there's been no one running against him, so we haven't had the hustings, we haven't had the questions, we haven't had him setting out his vision. He hasn't done many interviews at all. He hasn't even taken questions at press conferences. It doesn't feel...
He has started to, though. I mean, I think he has started to do some of those interviews. And like I said, talking to the public is...
He done?
Well, he did one on LBC that was with Andrew Marr, very high-profile political journalist. So, not shying away from the questions that would be asked there, going out there directly to the public, filming those things, talking about the things that he wants to see and that he thinks resonates with the public. And we've got the whole of the summer where I'm sure that you will get your opportunity to ask those questions
by the way,
of him.
It's actually, just want to make really clear, it's not about me asking for it. I don't really care who he does it with, and I'm glad he's done one with Andrew Marr. But one interview, for a guy who's about to be Prime Minister next week, when genuinely, I really don't know what he stands for on an awful lot of things.
I think, there's always going to be areas of policy that develop over time. But I think that from what he's done in Manchester, that it's very clear that he's got economic growth and prosperity for people at the heart of what it is that he wants to try and achieve. And, we're going to have the leadership election very shortly this morning. And I suspect that things will change from his inner team then. And you'll have plenty of opportunity, you and the rest of the media, to ask him questions.
Can I ask about the cabinet? Who would you like to see?
Oh, I'm not going to get into one. It's not my choice, is it? It's not my choice. It's definitely Andy Burnham's choice, and he will make his decisions as and when. I think there's plenty of talent to choose from, and I'm looking forward to seeing who it is who gets selected.
What would you like, I guess, the next Chancellor to be focusing on?
Well, I think it's got to be about economic growth. It absolutely has to be. For me, personally, I'm also looking at things around reindustrialisation because in my area, jobs is the most important thing.
OK, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
On speaking to us there. Well, joining us now is Paul Johnson, the former director of the Institute for Fiscal Studies, provost of Queen's College, Oxford. Great to have you on the programme. Loving the kind of jazzy shirt as well, I have to say. That's nice, little Friday pick-me-up. What are you hoping for from Andy Burnham?
Well, to follow on from what Melanie was just saying, a relentless focus on growth, which is, of course, what Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves promised us, but didn't really deliver, both in terms of the way they increased taxes and the way they increased regulation and the way they shied away from some difficult decisions. Now, that's an easy thing to say and a difficult thing to do. It's difficult for two reasons. I mean, first is that it's a long-term project. And one of the shame of where we've ended up with is you really do need to be getting going in the first year of a parliament to start really seeing the rewards towards the end of the parliament. But it's also difficult to do because there are always trade-offs. You make some people, if you reform the tax system, if you radically reform the planning system, if you liberalise markets, you make some people better off and some people worse off. And after a long period of very poor growth, it's very difficult to make decisions that make some people worse off, even in the short run.
Can I ask you about devolving power to the regions and what your own view is on this? Because that one thing we do know about Andy Burnham is he wants to devolve power away from Westminster, right? I feel like that is the one thing we can be pretty solid on. Is that something that you would welcome, Or do you worry, I guess, about the scrutiny of local government, for example? What's your own view on that?
Yeah, I mean, I am very positive about it. I think for two reasons. One is just in the broad general sense, England, and I say specifically England, is pretty much the most centralised country in the developed world in terms of how little power locally elected politicians have and how centralised decisions over tax and spending are. So I think if you can devolve that in an effective way, it increases accountability. And there's at least some evidence that it's good for growth across the country as well, because you get better decisions if those decisions are taken closer to the front line and in ways which are good for growth in local areas. Now, I can't prove that. I mean, I think it's worth saying that the evidence on that is suggestive rather than definite. Now, again, rather as with growth, though, this is a generational change. This is not something that you kind of flick a switch and then next year where everything will be suddenly devolved and working well. This is something where you need a programme over a really significant period of time, at least 2 parliaments, to make the transition, to build up the capability at local level to carefully move responsibility from one place to the other. And then it'll take at least a generation before that starts to really have effect. So a really good thing to do, but not the sort of thing. And again, this is where the political cycle and the real world cycle clash, not the sort of thing that's going to make a great big difference by the time we have a general election in 2029. So good luck to him, but recognise it's a big job.
Yeah, this is almost, I guess, the issue with our politics. I often think the short-term decision-making that is almost encouraged by the political system when actually we do need things that are going to bear fruit in 20 years' time or whatever. On the devolution, what about, like, tax-raising powers? Could you pay different taxes in different regions? Would that be a good idea?
Well, the current government, interestingly, Rachel Reeves has said that she wants a form of tax devolution in the sense that mayoral authorities would get a share of the income tax revenue raised in their areas, but not at the moment giving them any power over the rates of tax in those areas. Now, it is possible to have additional devolution of tax raising powers compared with what we have at the moment. So in Scotland, they have significant ability to change income tax and other taxes. And don't forget, Scotland, in terms of its size, isn't actually very big. It's got about the same population as Yorkshire. I mean, it's not. If you can do it in Scotland, and the powers are in Wales as well, and Wales is much smaller than that. That's got a similar population to Greater Manchester or the West Midlands Authority. So these are things that it is perfectly feasible to do. And I do think that in the medium term, there'll be some value in doing it.
There's going to be a bit of a battle, I think it's fair to say, within Labour as soon as the Chancellor is announced, whether it's Shabana Mahmood, whether it is Ed Miliband's. One half of the party is going to be upset, right? What do you think Andy Burnham needs to do when it comes to fiscal responsibility? Because there are some who say, look, he needs to borrow more to invest. Others who say, actually, he needs to be really, really careful not to spook the markets.
I think he does need to be careful. I mean, really careful. I mean, there's a fiction abroad that over the last 20-odd years, we have been incredibly fiscally conservative and we've not spent anything and we've not borrowed very much. And that's just not true. We've actually increased our debt in this country by more than, I think, any other advanced country in the last 25 years. And that's because we have borrowed more year on year on year over that period. And we are paying a higher rate of interest on our debt than almost any other advanced country. Now, that's partly because people aren't terribly convinced about how well we're managing our public finances. It's partly because we've had a higher rate of inflation, actually, than any of the other G7 advanced economies over the last 20 years or so. I think it'd be really quite concerning if this new government came in and said, oh, look, we can borrow a whole bunch more. And don't forget, we're already spending more on debt interest than on any public service other than the NHS. It's not a free borrowing is not a free lunch. It comes back to bite you, and it's biting us very hard at the moment.
Really interesting to hear your take, as always. Thank you very much for being on the programme today. Paul Johnson speaking to us there.
Thank you.
You're watching our special programme as we await to see Andy Burnham be coronated as Labour leader. Coming up, who's tipped for Chancellor? Who could be making a political comeback? We're going to take you through the key runners and riders for an Andy Burnham cabinet. Who could be in Andy Burnham's cabinet? This is a huge, huge decision because his decisions that he makes of who's going to be cabinet are going to have a big impact on policy as well. Now, Shabana Mahmood, first person I want to talk to, because what a lot of people are saying is that she is the front runner to become Chancellor, the most important decision that he is likely to make. Wes Streeting was considered at some point, but it's understood that he's less likely to come up with that role, but probably rewarded with something for deciding not to run against Andy Burnham in that leadership race. The other person, of course, who would have been hoping to be Chancellor is Ed Miliband, close ally of Andy Burnham. Many people were hoping, on the left of the party, were hoping that he could end up being Chancellor. But there are others who've really, really rebelled against that idea, and the current thinking is that they've won. But we'll wait and see. We don't know yet. Angela Rayner, someone that I think it's fair to say we're tipping for a cabinet comeback. And also Louise Hay. She is somebody who was sacked from Keir Starmer's cabinet, but she's a super close ally of Andy Burnham, who's effectively been running his leadership campaign. And the idea is that she's probably going to end up with a kind of souped-up Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster position. Another person likely to get a big job is Yvette Cooper. Some are even saying that she could end up being a unity Chancellor, but the kind of person that we are expecting to get a big role in an Andy Burnham cabinet. And the final one is Lisa Nandy, another Northern MP, has been out knocking doors with Andy Burnham, someone who, again, believes very strongly in devolution. So I think from a policy perspective, could end up with a big one there. Right, let's have a look, shall we, at some of the people who perhaps could also be in for jobs. Jonathan Reynolds maybe could come back as his old role as business secretary. David Miliband, I mean, I have to say, I'm not convinced about this one, but there's been loads of chatter about David Miliband coming back for a cabinet role. Maybe I'm wrong, but could we really have two Miliband brothers in the cabinet again? I mean, honestly, the mind boggles. David Lammy is someone who is a key ally of Keir Starmer. He did the whip around to buy him that carriage clock, if you remember. He was ringing around MPs saying that they should be backing Keir Starmer. What is he going to do with David Lammy? And also, what is he going to do with Darren Jones, another key ally of Keir Starmer? These two, are they going to be out, or is he going to try and build bridges with the kind of Starmerite group by giving them jobs? We'll wait and see. John Healey, another one to keep your eye on. He, of course, quit as Defence Secretary because he said that Keir Starmer wasn't spending enough money on defence. Could he be back? We'll have to wait and see. Bridget Phillipson, Education Secretary, another Keir Starmer ally. Be interesting to see whether or not he decides to get rid of her. And Rachel Reeves, again, she was hoping, I think it's fair to stay as Chancellor, but I think that is looking vanishingly unlikely. I think the interesting thing would be whether or not she decides to accept a lesser cabinet job or not. Let's bring in our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, shall we? We've just had a little rattle through of potential runners and riders for an Andy Burnham cabinet. What are you picking up?
So, I hate saying this, Sophie, but this is a nail-biter. Absolutely, you know, if you're a political nerd like me, absolutely on the edge of the seat over this one. I just don't know in so many different cases. Let me take you a couple examples. You mentioned Yvette Cooper. You know, there's an outside chance she could be Chancellor. She could stay as Foreign Secretary. But, Sophie, I wonder whether there's also a chance that she could be the biggest casualty of all on Monday and end up with no job at all. That's how much we don't know about her. You talk about Lisa Nandy and Angela Rayner, those figures who've been long marchers with Andy Burnham, Manchester MPs. But I tell you this, Sophie, I know that at the heart of the Burnham campaign, they're worried about this being seen as a project of soft left Manchester MPs. So it is absolutely not a given that all of those figures get jobs, or at least the jobs that they want. And then there's the question even of Chancellor. We think that's going to go to Shabana Mahmood, but we are told, I think they're being told, that no final decision has been made. And there's clearly a massive lobbying campaign going on by allies of Ed Miliband at the moment to try and make sure it's him. But if Andy Burnham has drawn up some plans for his first couple of weeks for some cuts to, for instance, bus fares and energy bills and all of that, and he's done it without consulting his new Chancellor, well, that's quite something, and stuff might get tricky there. So there are so many known unknowns with Monday's cabinet. There's a big one that lies behind it all. Do the jobs even look the same? All sorts of rumours that Andy Burnham's interested in rewiring the top of government, maybe abolishing some government departments. That needs to be factored in as well. As I was saying earlier, the thing that Andy Burnham and his team have done incredibly well is keep information very, very tight. Supporters say that's a sign of a great, disciplined political operation. Detractors say maybe that's because that's not much of a plan at all.
Sam, you've got a bit of polling to bring us as well, because, look, we're all trying to work out what the public really think about Andy Burnham, potential policies. What is it that you found out?
In roughly 2 weeks today, exactly 2 weeks today, the race to succeed Andy Burnham in Greater Manchester takes place. We'll find out the result. Who will be the mayor of Metro Mayor of Greater Manchester? And this morning, in the last hour, YouGov has released the results of their poll on that, and it is a big boost for Andy Burnham. You can see it on the screen. Now, it's a supplementary voting system. It's not first past the post. So a couple of rounds, people put first preference and second preference. So in the first round, you can see Andy Burnham's Labour successor, Bev Craig, comprehensively in front, 38 to Reform's 24 and the Greens 17. And when you go through to the second round, because no candidate got over 50% in the first round, you can see just at the bottom of your screen there that Bev Craig for Labour beats Reform UK Sean Astley by 62 to 38. I think that will be a big and early win if the result's anything like that, Sophie, because Reform did pull ahead all over Greater Manchester in the local elections. I think this will be taken as a sign that Andy Burnham can do better, particularly against Reform, like he did in Makerfield in the by-election a few weeks ago, and proof that maybe there is some kind of Burnham bounce. Also, that Burnham helps voters on the left kind of congregate around him and his candidates to stand up to reform. So the results that you're looking on the screen just there would be a dramatic boost in the early weeks of Andy Burnham's premiership if the Greater Manchester Metro Mayor turns out anything like the numbers you can see now.
Yeah, really, Sam. I mean, it does go against, as you said, like what we were being led to believe, and actually what kind of allies of Keir Starmer were saying, that Andy Burnham shouldn't run to be an MP because reform could take away the Greater Manchester mayoralty. I mean, it doesn't look on that evidence that that's going to happen.
No, there's quite a lot of sourness, I have to say, Sophie, amongst some of the allies of Keir Starmer, and they were throwing out shade like that. Well, he ought to go and campaign in Greater Manchester to make sure Labour doesn't lose to reform that mayoralty. Well, it looks, I mean, I've done polling for a long time, and that is a very clear advantage for Labour. I think Labour will be pretty happy about that. It doesn't look like there's much doubt in that race. It's a 2,000 voter sample from YouGov, so I think there's a pretty big, so I think it's a pretty clear steer of where that's going. It will be a huge win for Andy Burnham and will just reinforce the sense of honeymoon. But the big challenge isn't his political vibes, which seem to be winning people over. It's whether he has a plan that works that we'll find out about on Monday.
Yeah, we certainly will. Sam, thank you very much indeed. Sam Coates speaking to us there with a bit of polling as well. Well, you're watching our special programme on the day that Andy Burnham will officially win the Labour leadership. Coming up on the programme, Keir Starmer has been out and about. It's his final day. He's been talking to Beth Rigby, our political editor. We'll bring you that in just a few moments. So it is a big day today. Andy Burnham preparing to become Labour leader officially this afternoon, and then he will get the keys to number 10 and become Prime Minister on Monday. But his predecessor, Keir Starmer, remember him? He started the week in France and then he had a final turn in Prime Minister's questions, ending the week yesterday in Ukraine. And it was there he was speaking to our political editor, Beth Rigby. Keir Starmer insisted he's leaving the UK in a better position than when he found it, and that he goes with pride.
Prime Minister, you're here in Ukraine today. This is your last big act as Prime Minister. What's your message to President Zelensky as you prepare to stand down?
My message to President Zelensky is one I delivered at the press conference, but I'd also delivered privately to him. And that is that the UK commitment to Ukraine will not waver. We will be there for as long as it takes and a long time afterwards. And it was really important as I stepped down that I told that to President Zelensky. And I wouldn't have said it publicly if I hadn't had the opportunity to talk it through with him privately. And I'm absolutely confident that the UK support will not waver.
You also said something you haven't said before today. You said you now believe Ukraine can win this war. You haven't said that before.
I believe Ukraine will win this war. I think that the last 6 months have been a real turning point because at the beginning of the conflict, everybody assumed that Russia would win within a matter of weeks. We are now in year 5, and what has happened in that time is Ukraine has begun to push back on the front this year. I remember the early days seeing their capability to now world-leading capability. What they've shown is that it's not just the size of your army, it's how you fight a modern conflict. And so they are probably the most effective fighting machine in Europe.
PM, you spent a lot of time on foreign affairs. You care deeply, clearly, about Ukraine. You've worked very hard with Zelensky and Macron. You're clearly leaving office before you are ready. You would not have chosen to go now. Why have your MPs rejected you after such a short time?
Well, the way I look at this is not just the 2 years we've had in government, but the 6.5 years that I've been on the front line. I took over the leadership of the Labour Party early in 2020. We had just lost the 2019 election. That was the worst election result for the Labour Party since 1935, and most people thought the Labour Party is finished, it'll never win again. So for the parliamentary party, the question who was the right person to save our party, to take it to victory in a general election and second biggest majority ever of a Labour government, that's answered. I've answered that question. They're now asking the question, who's best to take us into 2029? Yeah. They've given the answer to that question.
Do you think if you'd stayed on, you could have won the next election? Labour could have won with you as the leader?
I've always believed we would win the next election, but the decision about who's best placed to take us into 2029 is a decision the parliamentary party has taken. I accept it in good grace.
So you sort of almost had to put your own ego aside a bit in that moment?
I think it was very... I've always said country first, and I've always meant country first, and that means in the end I felt I had to take the decision what was in the best interest of the country. And I don't... and I do that with good grace because that is what I've lived by. That is the right thing to do.
Can I ask you, what did Vic say to you? Because what did Vic think?
Well, I'm not going to get into the ins and outs of what Vic said, but I can tell you this. Through every step, she's been with me.
Yeah.
The good, the bad, the challenging, the great moments, the victory nights, the really low moments when somebody tried to burn our house down, our family house, when my brother died. The last few months, which have not been easy, but she's been there at my side every step of the way. And so that's why we had to take the decision together.
And when you walk out of the door for the final time on Monday, how do you think you're going to feel? Is it going to be relief, pride, sadness, a big cocktail of emotion?
I go with pride. I go knowing that I leave the country in a better state than I found it, and I go knowing I've left the foundation for Labour to win the next general election.
Yeah.
And I go out and I will immediately that afternoon spend time with Vic and the kids, and I look forward to that.
So my final question is, as you hand on the baton, you believe that you set Andy Burnham up to win the next general election, and part of the next phase of this administration's success is your success?
I hope so. We've built the foundation for this now, and Labour can go on and win that election. I think we'll go on and win that election. I'm proud to hand over the party in good shape to Andy Burnham, hand over the country in good shape to Andy Burnham. I will support him all the way. I'll give advice if it's asked for, and I'll give it privately. I will not give advice if it's not asked for, and I certainly won't give it publicly. I will give my full support, and that is what I mean. I want my country to thrive, and I'm sure it'll be a great success going forward.
Keir Starmer there giving his final interview to our political editor, Beth Rigby. You're watching our special programme as Andy Burnham becomes leader of the Labour Party. We're going to have more coverage after this short break.
Opening hours of the war on Iran, a primary school was hit by a missile designed to blow up military bunkers.
What I've seen, that was done by Iran.
We've been investigating.
Can you explain why you cannot reveal what happened in Minab?
Denial, denial.
And we've travelled to Minab.
Grave after grave is overwhelming.
To gather evidence and talk to victims.
I just have a question, why?
An interview that lasted nearly 5 minutes. We talked about Prime Minister Starmer. We talked about the special relationship with who he said. It was a jam-packed interview. I'll tell you what he told me, and I'll explain why you can't hear the call.
I'm Mark Stone, and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Have you seen what Donald Trump's been up to? In the Rose Garden, in the East Wing.
100 days in and back with the grassroots of this MAGA movement.
It feels a little bit like he's a king, not a president.
He is a king.
I've witnessed the remarkable passion for politics here, but the anger too.
Everything in America feels kind of torn in two right now, and it has been an intense few weeks for Minneapolis.
How many more people have to die?
This is not America.
A large and growing protest movement. They're vocal and they're angry.
Are these immigration rates?
Unbelievable we've come to this.
We just arrived in Doha, just ahead of President Trump, and look at that. The horse-backed military, and beyond them, the skyline of a city transformed.
There seems to be some sort of a shooting, what appear to be shots fired at the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
What do America's Christian faithful make of the president's pop at the Pope?
The ones that vote for him are going to vote for him through thick and thin.
Before anybody criticizes the Pope, they need to think more than twice.
Mark Stone from Sky News. Will you stop buying Russian energy? Is there any assurance for Palestinian self-determination?
Of course.
It's a big shift by President Trump.
This post of Trump, it's a big shift. It's a big shift. It's very positive.
Sky News, the full story first.
Good morning. Today is the day when Andy Burnham will officially become leader of the Labour Party, and then on Monday he is going to become Prime Minister. So what can we expect? To discuss all that, we can bring in Sir Bren Bradshaw, former Labour Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport. And we've also got with us Kitty Donaldson, who's a chief political commentator at the iPaper. Kitty, you got a little scoopette for us, have you? This is Lucy Powell.
Scoopling. Yes, Lucy Powell, the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, is going to stand up before Andy Burnham. Shabana Mahmood as well. She's the chair of the NEC. And therefore couldn't nominate Andy Burnham for leader, which has caused quite a lot of consternation with people sort of seeing conspiracies where there are none. But anyway, Lucy Powell, I'm told, is going to thank Keir Starmer for his achievements, say that Labour has done a lot that it can be proud of and needs to carry on in that vein, and that the party needs to come together, actually, to rewire the country more profoundly for ordinary people. And I think that's quite interesting because it shows where she thinks the party should head. And I think that probably does reflect what Andy Burnham's going to say as well. But talking to the people who they represent, and that was very much the argument of Makerfield, wasn't it? That we, the Labour Party, are the party that can represent you against reform but also looking more widely, the party is split on both flanks. It needs to appeal to the Greens as well. We saw that from Andy Burnham the other day. He started talking about Gaza, whereas Keir Starmer hasn't talked about Gaza for a while. And it's sort of trying to position itself both sides and in a kind of sort of all-encompassing bear hug for the future.
Really interesting. We're going to hear more from that from 12 today. We're kind of counting down, if you like. But let's bring in Ben at this point, shall we? So you obviously served in the cabinet back in the day with Andy Burnham. What was he like?
He was a very effective minister, a very rounded politician, very personable, very good communicator. He's the sort of politician that the public, unlike most politicians, say they'd be happy to go and have a pint in the pub with. And I think he'll do a very effective job as Prime Minister.
The thing that I'm quite intrigued about when it comes to Andy Burnham is that, do you think he's always had this political philosophy that he seems to now? Or do you think that actually he went to Greater Manchester and discovered it?
I think it's a combination of both. I mean, he's clearly very rooted in his background, Roman Catholic, communitarianism, steeped in Labour politics, and politics of social mobility. But at the same time, I think, having left behind Westminster, which at the time, he clearly didn't like, and for understandable reasons. It was the beginning of the Corbyn era. It was a very difficult time to be in Corbyn's shadow cabinet. He went back to Manchester, and I think there was a melding together of those values that he was brought up with what had already been underway in Manchester, put in train by his predecessors, and has built on that, built it very effectively, and has been very good at telling a story about that.
Because I guess the criticism that some have of Andy Burnham is that he's a bit like a weather vane. He can't really tell what he believes in because he's held different positions and has been on different flanks of the Labour Party throughout his career.
Well, that was the criticism that was made of him quite a long time ago during two leadership elections. Actually, I think since then there's been a toughening and a hardening. And I don't think it's a weakness in a politician to change your mind about something. If the facts change, you have to change your mind about something. We've already seen him shift his position, haven't we, on a number of issues from 6 months ago, or the last conference where he was being rather dismissive of the bond markets. That tone has changed, and I suspect he will not be like that as Prime Minister. So he's shown, I think, the right flexibility, but I think the inner core is there of the kind of values he represents, and they are mainstream Labour values.
And we've been talking, haven't we already, Kitty, about the kind of people he might bring into his cabinet, and you were reflecting on, I guess, a bit of a tussle, I think it's fair to say, from different wings of the party.
I think so, and I think that's very much what we're seeing play out in the sort of briefing against Ed Miliband and for Ed Miliband. And quite interesting, yesterday Bloomberg broke a story saying that there will be legislation or an announcement about legislation as soon as next week, in which effectively abandoning net zero and going ahead with drilling for oil and gas, and also part nationalising Thames Water. So we are seeing a sort of on the oil and gas thing, we're sort of seeing a movement away from Ed Miliband's kind of hold on that policy as well, particularly if they then make him Foreign Secretary. He won't really be in the country very much.
What do you reckon about
I don't think that's completely fair. My suspicion was that both on Thames Water and on those two oil and gas fields, that these things would have happened anyway. They were sort of about to happen, and what Andy is doing is just giving them a final shove, if that is indeed what happens.
What do you think about Ed Miliband, though? Would you think he'd make a good Chancellor? Or?
I think it's completely pointless to speculate about ministerial positions. You're going to have to wait till Monday.
Oh, come on, Ben.
It's 3 days. It's 3 days. And I think what's been
We've got hours of the special programme to go.
What's been very... I'm sorry about that. You're going to have to do something to fill it. But what's been very impressive, I think, about this so far is how tightly all of this has been held by Andy in a very tightly knit group. Very little, if anything, of substance has leaked. It's all speculation. We're just going to have to wait 2 or 3 months. But it will be vital. I mean, who he makes Chancellor, who he appoints to his cabinet, will be the first real sign of where he wants to take the country.
Just on the Ed Miliband point, and I do take your view, Ben, but the other thing that's been going on is the union backing for Andy Burnham. We've seen Sharon Graham, the very fighty...
Good word.
Yes, I was searching for an adjective there. The very fighty leader of Unite, who has backed Andy Burnham for leader. And actually, Sharon Graham spent the last 2 years basically throwing rocks at the Labour government. And so I think that's quite interesting. But the reason for doing that is that the argument seems to have been one that sort of jobs are more important than the net zero agenda. So I even if, and I think Ed Miliband is obviously very talented and does have an economics background, But I think we are seeing a move away from that sort of strand of thinking in the Labour Party. And I think even if Ed survives into a senior position, which I think he will, because, as I said, very talented, that kind of school of thought is changing direction.
And going back to where this conversation began, if Andy is that priority is as we think it will be, cost of living and the struggles that already be and growth, then those decisions would fit into that pattern, definitely.
You're someone who, in your kind of old seat of Exeter, you turned a marginal seat into a Labour seat, basically, right? So you know what it's like being at the kind of front line, if you like, of politics and winning people over. What's the single issue you think Andy Burnham should focus on in his premiership?
Housing, probably. I mean, I think there are probably three things. Housing, social care. If it's true he wants to do something about social care, that would be brave, but also essential. You know, we've got to sort out this problem that has bedeviled governments for the last decades, and it has seriously negative impacts on ordinary people, but also on the NHS. So if we can do housing and social care, that will be a very, very good legacy indeed.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. What would you say, Kitty?
I agree. And he did a clip yesterday, I think, from Cardiff. He sat down in the middle of this sort of social media video, talked to people, and one of the clips that was shown was he saying, "I want to expend a lot of political capital on social care." And actually, Louise Casey has been doing a lot of work on this already in number 10 for Keir Starmer. I think, and I talking to her about it, and she's done a lot of behind-the-scenes kind of trying to bring in other parties, because that's always been the problem, hasn't it, with social care, is that you need to get a kind of cross-party consensus, otherwise people end up calling it a death tax and so forth. If you can get that consensus, I mean, good luck to him.
And giving devolution a rocket boost as well. When a very interesting statement yesterday in the House where the government announced the biggest reorganisation of local government in England for 45 years by abolishing loads of councils, creating new unitaries, which would be much better at delivering.
So a lot of things on the to-do list. Thanks both very much indeed. Coming up, of course, we're going to bring you full coverage of a very important day in the future of this country, the day when Andy Burnham officially becomes the leader of the Labour Party, and then, of course, inevitably, he will be the next Prime Minister as well. We're going to get full coverage from 12 today of all those speeches and the moment itself. Good morning, this is Sky News. It is 11 o'clock. I'm Sophy Ridge. From Manchester to Westminster, Andy Burnham officially becomes Labour leader today. The former mayor is promising to put the cost of living and social care at the top of his agenda. But is he already facing revolt from inside his party? Also ahead, Keir Starmer spent his final days as Prime Minister in Ukraine and says he turned Labour around and left the country in a better place. The transition of change. Today, a new Labour leader. On Monday, a new Prime Minister. Good morning. Welcome to our special programme. We are live today from Westminster, currently at least, the heart of political power in this country. But the man who's due to take the reins, succeeding Keir Starmer, is promising to shake up the political status quo and to give more power to the regions, to local government, to local mayors. In just an hour's time, Andy Burnham will officially become the leader of the Labour Party, 1 month on from winning that Makerfield by-election and sending a message to his opponents. He's effectively been coronated with the backing of more than 400 MPs. Well, we can bring now our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Cates. Sam, all we can say, right, is that you are, in a basement in central London somewhere?
I am in a sweaty basement in central London. Behind me you can see the Labour sign, but you can also see the blinds. And behind those blinds is the room where in an hour's time the leader of the Labour Party will change from Keir Starmer, who it is at the moment, to Andy Burnham. By popular acclamation of the Labour Party, Sophie, 379 of the 403 Labour MPs nominated him. Just one Labour MP nominated somebody else, who herself nominated Andy Burnham. Every single affiliated union for the Labour Party has backed Andy Burnham for the leadership, and so many of those socialist societies that also make up the Labour family. They have done so after collectively deciding at speed after the local elections that Keir Starmer could no longer represent them as head of the party and Prime Minister. This is the first part of a two-part process. Today, the Labour leadership regenerates. On Monday, Andy Burnham takes over from Keir Starmer as Prime Minister. That's a ritual that involves a visit to the palace. But what we'll get in an hour's time is quite a short event in this, frankly, cauldron. Lucy Powell, the deputy leader, will speak. Shabana Mahmood, who for the purposes of today is chair of Labour's ruling committee, the national executive, but of course in about 96 hours she could also be anointed chancellor in an Andy Burnham cabinet. And then we'll get a 10-minute or so speech from the man himself. What are we going to get? Well, a little bit more, I would argue, of the same. He's going to talk about the fact that he will govern as authentic Labour. There's something of a rebuke to Keir Starmer, a suggestion that maybe in the 2 years since that general election landslide, they haven't been governing as true Labour to this point. Lots of arguments about the way Keir Starmer was taking on reform, toughening up immigration policies, cozying up to Donald Trump. The suggestion is that Andy Burnham will turn the page. But I have to say, Sophie, what we are getting, what we have got all the way along from Andy Burnham is governing and planning and promising through vibes rather than specifics. There's a remarkable lack of detail of what he will actually do and who will do it with him at the top table. So this is a moment where there is huge hope and huge expectation, but in this room filled with Labour MPs, potential cabinet ministers, members of the national executive, there is no certainty at all about what's about to hit them.
Can I just say, I'm loving the fact that you're really leaning into the basement vibes by the kind of slight pixelation that is currently crossing your screen every now and then. It's like the sweaty cauldron is really being replicated on screen here. I'm loving it. You can hear the chatter behind you as well. What's the atmosphere like there? Are people excited?
So let's be honest, Sophie. Yes, they're excited, they're pleased. There's lots of people smiling. There are people who've worked with Andy Burnham for 20 years, like Kevin Lee, who is here. His man finally making it to Downing Street. Had a quick word with him. The pride was evident. Lots of other people delighted to be turning the page. But this is a surreal moment. This is a party that knifed a landslide winning leader in the last month and is now embarking on a journey, the destination of which they do not No. So it's a little bit of nervous excitement. There's a little bit of presenteeism. You've got cabinet ministers like Johnny Reynolds, he's the chief whip at the moment, very much hoping to get a big job in an Andy Burnham government, maybe even his old job of business secretary back. Could being here, showing your face at the big moment for Andy Burnham, help get you over the line as they try and make the final decisions. And I'm just looking around because all the security guards and other officials sort of wandering around as we prepare for that moment in 3/4 of an hour. So nervousness, yes, optimism, but sort of excited chatter from a party that knows it has only one chance left to get the leadership right and have decided, based on vibes rather than specifics, that the answer has to be Andy Burnham.
Sam, thank you very much. We're going to let you go off and hobnob and talk to some of the people in the room, pick up some of the atmosphere. Thank you very much indeed. Sam Coates speaking to us there from a sweaty cauldron, a basement in central London, where in under an hour's time, Andy Burnham is going to become leader of the Labour Party. So Kelly Donaldson, chief political commentator at the iPaper, joins us in the studio. One of the most plugged-in journalists in Westminster, I should say. So great to have her with us this morning. How do you think Andy Burnham is going to be as Prime Minister? That's $1 million question.
Yes, exactly. Optimistic, and a lot flows from that, doesn't it? In fact, positive vibes, and we are talking about vibes at the moment, but that has a real-world consequence, actually. Had a consequence when Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer came in, had an effect on consumer confidence, had an effect on business investment and hiring. When they came in and they were really dour about the state of the economy, well, the economy reacted, the economy contracted as a result of that. So actually a little bit of boosterism goes quite a long way.
Good vibes are OK, mostly.
Yes, exactly. Was it the Beach Boys who said that? Yeah. So it was like good vibrations. Either way.
All good. Vibrations, vibes.
Yes, exactly. And also it sort of helps, I think, helps get legislation through when every MP, Labour MP you talk to talks about a kind of reset moment, about how the interaction between the Parliamentary Labour Party and the leadership is going to be much better, problems will be resolved earlier, and therefore big rebellions, hopefully, they think won't happen. And also, for instance, the welfare bill. They all know in their heart of hearts they've got to get the welfare bill down. But actually, quite a lot of work's been going on behind the scenes from Pat McFadden, the current Work and Pension Secretary. He's been doing a lot of outreach to members of the Labour Party saying, you know, we can make things better for people on personal independence payments, and we can do an upfront investment in young people so that they can get into work on time. Therefore, any rebellion, any potential rebellion, is being seen off at the pass. And they've learned their lesson from party management, which was, by the way, one MP described to me last week as on the ocean floor, along with, you know, the plankton, basically, under Keir Starmer. So it's that positivity. And Sam's absolutely right. They think they've got one shot at this because they've got an existential crisis in the shape of Nigel Farage. And the kind of exam question has changed, hasn't it? Since Keir Starmer was elected, he's got this massive majority. But since when the exam question has changed, and the change is who can beat Nigel Farage? And they say, well, there's a proof point up in Makerfield because Andy Burnham stood against, admittedly, quite a rubbish candidate up there, but he was standing against Reform. Reform chucked a lot of resources at that campaign. And if he can beat Farage up in Makerfield, perhaps he can beat him in other places in the country.
Yeah, exactly. And it was a gamble. It's easy to, like, look back at it. But actually, at the time, that was, on paper, a Reform seat, right?
Yes, of course, because all the local councils have gone Reform in May. So you're absolutely right. And there's a kind of something about Andy Burnham's personal brand that Labour absolutely adores. He's kind of easy to talk to. That's true. He's very hard to dislike. And so at the moment, everyone's sort of giving him the benefit of the doubt.
So the vibes are good.
Yeah.
But I guess quite quickly, vibes are not just going to be enough, right? He's going to have to come up with some policies as well. Yeah. Maybe he knows exactly what they are, but we don't know what they are yet, which I guess is that kind of tentative moment when you're not sure how it's going to go.
No, well, exactly. And Steve Rotherham, who's probably Andy Burnham's closest political ally, the mayor of Liverpool, was making the case yesterday for wealth taxes. So sort of you've got kind of conflicting signals coming out. If you make Shabana Mahmood, you know, Chancellor of the Exchequer, supposed to be better with the city, perhaps because she's on that side of the party. Although she is from the sort of blue Labour wing, which is kind of socially conservative but higher taxes. So You've got that going on. Then you've got Steve Rotherham saying... He was talking about Paul Daniels, the magician, saying, well, Paul Daniels... I know.
That's a curveball I wasn't expecting.
Sorry about that. Remember Paul Daniels, the late magician, husband of Debbie McGee? He threatened to leave when last time a wealth tax was mentioned, didn't go. And he, Steve Rotherham says, is a good example of actually why a wealth tax won't drive away high earners. I'm not sure about that. I think it's been tested to destruction in other parts of Europe, and actually we might see a capital flight. But you can see how people are pitch rolling around, Andy, and what I was talking about earlier, like projecting onto him what they want to see him do. I think taxes are going to go up in the autumn. Yeah. So at that point, once the weather turns, once everyone's less cheerful, you know, will we be so cheerful in 3 months' time? I don't know.
Yeah, really interesting. Kitty, thank you very much indeed, Kitty Johnson there. Well, look, I think nearly everyone is exactly, and all you guys watching, I'm sure, know exactly who Andy Burnham is. He's a household name, but the whole details of his 25-year rise to power are worth looking at. So let's pause and look back at his political career to date. It started in 2001 when he entered Parliament after being elected the MP for Lee in the general election. 2005, he was given a position in Tony Blair's government. I'm getting retro now. He served as the Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State, and he was then appointed to Gordon Brown's cabinet in 2007 when he was the Chief Secretary to the Treasury. In 2008, he was Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport, and then he got a promotion in June 2009, taking on the role as Health Secretary. I mean, look, people say he's inexperienced, and I think that it is worth saying that that's not really true, right? You know, he held serious positions around the cabinet table. After the 2010 general election, Burnham then ran for the Labour leadership, but he lost out to Ed Miliband, who then appointed him Shadow Education Secretary. In 2015, he had another crack at it, so he ran again, but this time he lost to Jeremy Corbyn. Maybe it's going to be third time lucky. After a year serving in Jeremy Corbyn's shadow cabinet, Andy Burnham then announced he was going to stand to become mayor of Greater Manchester. And in May 2017, he then won that race with 63% of the vote. He spent 9 years in that job, became a very, very high-profile political figure. We all remember during the pandemic, of course, when he had those clashes with Boris Johnson over the COVID-19 restrictions. He was blocked from standing in the 2026 Gorton and Denton by-election, basically because Keir Starmer knew exactly what he was going to do. He was going to run for the leadership, which he did. But then he stood in the Makerfield by-election to try and return to Westminster. On 18th of June, he then won that seat, an MP once again, and then launched his third bid for the Labour leadership. Right, let's bring Lucy McDade, our political correspondent.
Hello.
Lucy, the day is here. Andy Burnham, Labour leader, he's done it, third time lucky.
I know. We've been talking about this day for weeks and weeks, haven't we? And the phrase we've been using is, you know, there's almost a sense of inevitability around it, but there was always the caveat that maybe somebody else would run, maybe he wouldn't get the numbers. But I think all roads have been leading to this eventuality. 379 MPs, I think it is, isn't it, that have nominated him to be the leader of the Labour Party. Interestingly, a number who chose not to. And I've been speaking to a few of them this week, actually, who, you know, saying, you know, why did you not nominate him? And a few of them made the point that they will back Andy Burnham, but I think many saw it as their kind of last way of displaying their loyalty to Keir Starmer, if you like, because there is still some unease in the party about how Keir Starmer has effectively been booted out. But you're right, today we've been talking about it for a long time, but he will officially, Andy Burnham, be crowned leader of the Labour Party, then on Monday becoming Prime Minister. He will give that speech where he's going to talk about Labour under him will be authentic to the Labour Party. One of the criticisms of Keir Starmer was that perhaps they tried to reform too much. They strayed away from some of their core values. And he will also address, I think, this criticism or this concern, even from some of his own MPs, but it's been a criticism that other parties have levelled at him, that he is too Manchester. We've heard about Manchesterism. Will he be a leader that listens to people in the south, in the southeast, in other parts of the north as well? He is going to say that he will be a leader for Wales, for Scotland, for Northern Ireland, for the whole of the country. And I think, you know, he will go on this summer tour where I think he will try and show people that he is listening to all of them. Whether it will be very different to what we've heard from him over the past few weeks, I don't know. But then...
It's not going to be, is it? It's going to be more broad brush. still.
Yeah,
probably.
and I was just speaking to somebody from the Liberal Democrats, kind of a senior insider in the party there, about this strategy, because I think it's very clear that it's a kind of a communication strategy, that at the moment, you know, they can kind of exist in this honeymoon period and they can drag out that lack of proper media scrutiny. And they were saying they actually think it's quite concerning, because what will happen is that when you get that first kind of big policy announcement from Andy Burnham, the reaction to it, well, he may be holding himself up to an even higher level of scrutiny and accountability there that maybe he wouldn't have had if he gave us a little bit more.
Yeah, it's a hard. I mean, I get it in a way, because it is a hard balancing act, that you don't want to seem too presumptive, right? You don't want to be like, you know, giving interviews while there is another Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, who is also giving
that point was
well.
made as well, actually. What you don't want to do when it's, you know, Keir Starmer is still Prime Minister until Monday, so he doesn't maybe want to step on his toes too much, but then he kind of hasn't he?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So you might as well go the whole way.
Yeah, Keir Starmer's going to hate you anyway, mate, so, you know, you don't worry about that one, that ship sailed. Can we talk a bit about the potential cabinet? Because, Kitty, obviously, you broke the line about Shabana Mahmood becoming Chancellor, which is the big one that everyone's been talking about. And I guess that is a big statement if that happens.
Absolutely. And there are other people, of course, going to come back as well. I think Angela Rayner is in line for a senior position. Also, Annalise Midgley, who's been very key to the Burnham campaign up at Makerfield, a very strong ally. She's the kind of link person between the Labour Party and the unions, which I think we were talking about just before, about how the unions come out in favour of Andy Burnham. I think she'll probably get something like party chair. Then there's Louise Haigh, another member of the Praetorian Guard. She's going to get Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, that kind of coordinating role across government. Wes Streeting, in line for a big job, I think. Well, no, I'm not quite sure what. Probably not health, maybe education, we're not sure. And that's because these people have seemed to be very helpful, in a way, sort of not combative.
See, in a way, you know, just listening to you, and you're completely right in everything you say, I find it quite depressing, though, because what you end up with, and every time, I'm not just blaming Andy Burnham for this, but it's not necessarily like you knew loads about health, so I'm going to put you in the, in this department, or you know what, you've had a great background in business, so you're going to be. It's more like, right, you've helped me become leader. I need to make sure I don't annoy your faction. So it's like much more political rather than who's actually best suited for the job.
And I think Burnham's team have been saying that they want to appoint people into these roles who have the experience. But you're right in that when you read all of the speculation and you read the briefings, it does feel like it's people being rewarded, for certain moves that they've made over the past few months. One name that I don't think has been talked about that much, but I think shouldn't be underpriced, is Heidi Alexander.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, she's Transport Secretary at the moment, but am I right in saying that she is the only person in Cabinet at the moment who has nominated Andy Burnham 3 times?
Yeah,
for
3
Labour
times.
leadership?
There's a very small pool of people who've done that.
Yeah, a very close ally of Andy Burnham. Perhaps I know that she's really, really liked in the transport role among civil servants as well, but maybe she would be in line for a promotion.
I think that's right. I mean, Lisa Nandy's the other one as well, right? I feel, who has been out there on the campaign trail with Andy Burnham, but also if you're thinking about it from a policy perspective, if Andy Burnham's whole thing is devolution, well, who else has been banging that drum for years and years? It's Lisa Nandy, right? So you can see perhaps a unity in what motivates them as politicians.
But you've also got to balance the kind of, not just the left, not just, this term we use, the soft left, which is a bit of a kind of catch-all, but it sort of means people around Andy kind of... You've got to balance that with other people from different parts of the party. Perhaps he thinks he has done that if he gets Shabana Mahmood in and Wes Streeting back in. There are kind of people who sort of fall in that vein. And Johnny Reynolds, of course, the Chief Whip, who has not enjoyed his time as Chief Whip and definitely wants to come back as probably Business Secretary. I think he'd be very happy if he was offered that again.
It hasn't been easy as Chief Whip, has it?
Is it ever? That job?
The other name, we spoke about this when Darren Jones, when he ruled himself out of running for the Labour leadership. I remember saying to you that he had a conversation with Andy Burnham that I think, did he say it lasted about an hour or something?
Yeah.
And that, in that time, all of his economic concerns had been settled. His policy, the questions that he had about policy were settled, but denied there was any conversation about jobs. Although I do wonder if there was some reassurance there that he would, not necessarily cabinet, but I mean, could he still have a senior role in the Burnham administration?
I think you're absolutely right. And I was talking to someone who was aware of what went on in those conversations. I think you're absolutely right. No jobs have been offered in any of these conversations. But I think actually what's been most instructive is the attitude of the people going in. The people going in who have been sort of briefing that they should keep their jobs have annoyed people close to Andy Burnham, and the people who have kind of made a big song and dance about not backing down, about ultimatums, looking at you, Alcons, people who have been sort of up to the wire, kind of like, we need a conversation. These are my 5 tests. Yeah. That went down very badly too. It's kind of like if you've sort of been modest about it and gone in with the kind of ideas rather than it's all about me, then I think you're more likely to be rewarded than if you'd gone in with ultimatum.
And you put Wes Streeting in that camp then as someone who's...
Well, Wes, yes, I mean, and don't forget, Wes's antennae for politics are, I think, beyond anyone else, actually. And he knew which way the wind was going. He folded at exactly...
Early.
Well, yeah, really, yes, at the right time, and went in and was constructive. Yeah. And is a big beast in the party.
He's an effective performer as well, I think.
Yes,
a lot of people would say that too. Thanks both very much. Really interesting chat. We can talk now to Tom Baldwin, who's a former Labour Director of Communications, biographer of Keir Starmer. Are you going to have to write another biography soon, Tom?
I'm not planning to do that at the moment, no, thank you.
What do you make of an Andy Burnham Prime Minister? What are you hoping to see from him?
Well, like anybody from a Labour Party background, I'm hoping he succeeds. We live in a very febrile time. The speed with which Keir Starmer, who only 2 years ago led Labour to a landslide election victory and secured so many of the MPs who now ousted him their place in Parliament, the speed with which he's fallen to earth is breathtaking. It's unprecedented in the Labour Party's history, certainly not the Tory Party's, but certainly the Labour Party's history. And we've now got a new Prime Minister coming in, who you've just been talking about it, who is almost unprecedentedly opaque in that there hasn't been a general election where he stood on a manifesto. There hasn't been a leadership contest where he's had to set out different ideas and compare and contrast himself with other candidates. He's been more or less silent the last few weeks. There's sort of a couple of interviews, one with Gary Lineker, largely about football. And we just don't know really what he's going to do. And that's the question which lots of people are asking. And, much as you all hope, and we all hope that he will succeed, we just don't know what he's going to do and how much it's going to be about continuity and how much it's going to be about change.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because look, people around Team Burnham say the reason they don't know is because he can't go out there giving loads of interviews and saying out an agenda before he actually takes the job, because that would be presumptuous. Others say, actually, we hardly know anything about what this guy believes in or what direction he's going to take the country in. And there hasn't been that, even a hustings or anything like that. So what camp do you fall down in?
I don't think it would have been that presumptuous. I mean, making it very clear he wanted Keir Starmer's job and taking it is pretty much the height of presumptuousness in many ways. And so I don't think, he needed to worry too much about upsetting Keir Starmer more. I think the reason why we haven't heard very much from him is they're trying to work it out. And it's very difficult moving from Mayor of Manchester, a big city, to becoming Prime Minister. We know how tough that job is. And, they are trying to build as plane as they take off. They've had just a few weeks to prepare. They've got to get a team together. And right now is the absolute peak of Andy Burnham's reserves of political capital. He will never be more powerful than he is right now. Because after today, he has to start spending that political capital. He has to start making decisions. He has to start annoying some people. He has to start letting some people down. And how that falls out for him is, again, one of the things we don't know.
Yeah, I think annoying some people is a good point, actually, because at the minute you've got almost all factions of the Labour Party uniting behind Andy Burnham. I guess someone's going to be disappointed.
A lot of people are going to be disappointed. A lot of people are going to lose their jobs. And a lot of people who think they're going to get jobs aren't going to get jobs. He's going to have to start taking some decisions on policies, which means, where you're going to find money for some of the policies that he wants to do, and some of the policies which he wants to do, he won't be able to do. So being Prime Minister is about taking decisions. And that means necessarily spending your political capital and risking unpopularity in places.
Today's a big day because Andy Burnham becomes Labour leader. But it's also a big day for Keir Starmer. And it's, I guess, the kind of final moments of his time leading the Labour Party. Do you feel sorry for him?
To some extent, I do. He's made mistakes. Prime Ministers do make mistakes. I think he's very frustrated in that most Prime Ministers tell you that they make most of their mistakes in the first 2 years. And the trouble is, at the moment, we're in a situation where Prime Ministers only seem to get 2 years. We're in this constant revolving door of, here's another new phase, let's see where we can change things around. And we go back to the bottom of that very steep learning curve again and again and again. And so I think he's frustrated because I think he is now clocking up over the last few months some pretty solid achievements, and there's a real record of progress in lots of areas, whether it's public services, on the economy, Britain's international standing, which is a platform on which Andy Burnham can build. But again, one of the questions we don't know is whether Andy Burnham's going to come in and say, last 2 years were rubbish and we've got to start all over again, or whether he's going to build on that. And at the moment, it seems to be a bit of a hybrid between continuity and change.
Tom, always good to talk to you. Thank you very much for being on our special programme today.
Thank you.
Tom Baldwin speaking to us there. Well, the countdown is on. It is only, half an hour or so to go until Andy Burnham becomes leader of the Labour Party. Our special programme is going to continue. Coming up, we are going to be giving you the full details of the transition of power, which begins as Andy Burnham officially becomes leader of the Labour Party, third time lucky. Good morning. We are just going to interrupt the special programme on Andy Burnham for a moment to bring you some breaking news. It's a story that we've covered here at Sky News quite a lot. It's about the death of a man in Greece back in 2019. Luke Branston, a British man who was convicted in absentia by a Greek court back in March 2023. He is now being extradited. We can talk to our home editor, Jason Farrell, who is outside Westminster Magistrates Court for us. Jason, just give us the background of the story and explain what's happened today.
Well, this is one of those hideous and tragic one-punch killings where a man, 35-year-old Matt Jeffrey, was on holiday with his friends in Xanthi, Zakynthos. He was in a nightclub there was a fight broke out with a group of people from Essex who they'd never met before. They were followed out of the club. And what's extraordinary is that video actually captures what's happened, and he's punched by one individual, and then another individual, Luke Brownston, lands a fatal blow, knocking his head against the pavement, and he is killed. What is also extraordinary about this story is it's taken 7 years to get to this point. For a long time, when we started investigating, there were two men walking free in the UK who'd never faced justice for what had happened, even though they'd been prosecuted and found guilty in absence in Greece. And as we were doing the investigation, the extradition papers were served, and Luke Brownston was called to be extradited to Greece. And today, the judges have decided that he should be extradited to Greece. He did make claims based on European grounds, Article 3 of the Convention on Human Rights, over overcrowding in prisons in Greece. That's been rejected. He also claimed he hadn't had a fair trial. He said he didn't even know that the trial was happening. That has also been rejected. So for the Jeffrey family, this is a huge moment. They've campaigned for 7 years. I think they felt completely forgotten about until we picked up this case. And these guys didn't turn up at trial in Greece. They weren't initially arrested. The extradition papers weren't served. 7 years down the line now, Luke Brownston is being extradited to Greece.
Jason, thank you very much indeed. Jason Farrell there, reporting for us outside that magistrate's court. You're watching Sky News. Coming up next, who is tipped for Chancellor? Who could be making a political comeback? We're going to take you through all the key runners and riders in a Burnham cabinet. Right, now we're going to try and answer the question that we all want to know. Who is going to be in Andy Burnham's cabinet? Because the choices that he makes now could genuinely define the rest of his premiership and really have a big impact on the future of the country as well. The first choice, who is going to be Chancellor? Now, what the people are saying now, what all of our leaders are saying now, is that the front-runner is Shabana Mahmood. Could be a controversial choice, I think, particularly on those of the left of the party, but someone that Team Burnham seemed to really like the politics of. Another person, of course, who was considered at some point is Wes Streeting. Not thought that he's going to get the Chancellor role, but I'm sure he will be in line for a bumper cabinet position after he stood down from the leadership race to make room for Andy Burnham. Ed Miliband was seen as a front-runner, someone who has got a lot of experience in the Treasury, but the mood in Westminster seems to be that he's not likely to get the Chancellorship, but another big role, I'm sure, would await key ally of Andy Burnham. Could we see a comeback for Angela Rayner? I think that is almost certain. Someone who, of course, stepped down from Keir Starmer's cabinet, but seen as a bit of a star in the party, likely to get a cabinet role. And certain to get a cabinet role, I think, is Lou Hay. Really, the brains behind the Burnham operation, has been a key figure in all of those policy decisions. She's thought to get the kind of bumped-up Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster role, be a fixer, if you like, for Andy Burnham. Yvette Cooper, someone else who has been talked about an awful lot, could be seen to get a senior role in a cabinet as well, as is Lisa Nandy, a fellow Northern MP for Wigan, someone who strongly believes in devolution, almost certainly going to get a cabinet job under Andy Burnham. Now we're going to bring you to the maybes. So if those guys are likely to get in, who could get in? These are people who are perhaps less likely, but could still have a role. Johnny Reynolds, he's been hating it, frankly, as Chief Whip, so he's looking for a return to his role as Business Secretary. Another person who a lot of people have been talking about is David Miliband. I'm going to be totally honest with you, I just can't see a world where you have both Miliband brothers in an Andy Burnham cabinet. I mean, talk about return to the psychodrama, but, you know, stranger things have happened. Could he be Foreign Secretary? Maybe I'll be proved wrong. Now, I want to talk to you about these guys in between, because I think that both David Lammy and Darren Jones are key allies of Keir Starmer. So what is Andy Burnham going to do with them? Is he going to reach an olive branch across to supporters of the guy that he stabbed in the back, if you like, or are they going to be expunged from the cabinet? We're going to wait and see. A big test, I think, for Andy Burnham. John Healey is another interesting one, because he, of course, resigned as Defence Secretary because he didn't think that there was enough money going into defence. Could he come back after Andy Burnham? If he does come back in an Andy Burnham cabinet, what does that mean for defence spending? Bridget Phillipson, ally of Keir Starmer, current Education Secretary. Is she going to stay in the job? Unclear, I would say. Rachel Reeves, well, she's certainly not going to be Chancellor, but will another job be offered to her? And also, I think, will she accept it? Because, you know, if you're going to go from Chancellor to, for example, you know, Environment Secretary, is that something that she would be prepared to do? Not currently clear. So there's a lot of questions still to come. We've got a little tweet from Andy Burnham. Let's have a little look. Breaking news, Andy Burnham has just tweeted, "The next few days are about more than changing who governs Britain. They're about changing how Britain is governed." And I think we can read quite a lot in from that, actually. Not about changing who governs Britain. So, in other words, not just another Prime Minister in Westminster. It's about changing how Britain is governed. And I think this, again, just really shows that for Andy Burnham, it is about devolving power away from Westminster. The few policy announcements he's made already, for example, the number 10 in the North, have all been about that, changing how Britain is governed. And I think that's probably a bit of a tease from what we are expecting to hear from Andy Burnham as well. We're just a few moments away from Andy Burnham officially becoming the leader of the Labour Party, before he, of course, ultimately becomes Prime Minister on Monday. Let's bring in Sky's elections analyst, Rob Ford, shall we? How popular is Andy Burnham?
Well, he's very popular, Sophie. That's one of the reasons that we've had this extraordinary kind of extended coronation process. I think in the end, no one else in the Labour Party really wanted to go up against him, because when we look at polling of both Labour members and the general public, he is just streets ahead of everybody else in the Labour Party. I mean, this was the reason for staging this by-election in Makerfield. The whole argument was we've got to get our strongest player on the pitch. And in an era of real disillusionment about politics, real anti-politics sentiment, a politician who can post positive approval ratings with really quite broad swathes of the public is a rare thing indeed. And that is what he carries in to Downing Street. Of course, whether that lasts, well, we can't be sure. Already in the weeks since he has become a kind of leading figure, his numbers have started to drop. They've dropped in kind of a quite predictable way, in that the groups that we would expect to be least favourable towards Labour in general, people like reform voters, have become steadily more unfavourable towards him. So politics will start to weigh him down, but he certainly starts in a much stronger position than the person he's taking over from.
Just listen to you there saying how, you know, as the reality of politics hits, naturally, of course, his approval ratings will dip a bit. Do you think we're underpricing an early general election?
I really don't think we're underpricing an early general election for a couple of reasons. I mean, firstly, even if he gets a substantial bounce in the opinion polls, Labour will still be quite a long way down on where they were in 2024. Reform will almost certainly be quite a lot stronger. So what you'd be doing is gambling a lot of seats with a pretty high chance of losing quite a few of them. So that's reason number one. It's a gamble with a very big downside. Reason number two is it's a gamble he doesn't need to take. He's got more than 3 years left on the parliamentary clock, and he's sitting at the top of a parliamentary party where he's also very popular and where he has 400 MPs. So if he wants to get things done, he doesn't face an awful lot of constraints. The last time we got a snap early election was Theresa May in 2017. Of course, that didn't go very well, another thing that Burnham will be aware of. But she was doing that because she felt that she wouldn't be able to get her vision of Brexit through Parliament. It was too evenly divided. Burnham doesn't face that problem. If he keeps his MPs on board, he should be able to do more or less whatever he wants to do.
Yeah, you make a very compelling argument, actually, for why we're not underpricing it. It's fair enough. I guess we're going to find out a little bit more about what Burnhamism really is, right? Because he has been pretty untested. You know, we haven't had many interviews with him. He hasn't been taking many questions from the media either. What are you expecting, looking, I guess, through a polling lens at what an Andy Burnham Prime Minister is likely to try and focus on?
Well, I mean, I think it's really interesting, the tweet that popped up just as I was waiting to speak to you, Sophie, because it was more or less the point I was going to make. If there's anything that's really defined Andy Burnham in the last 10 years, it has been a politics of place. It has been thinking about politics less in terms of national issues and national electorates, and more in terms of specific places with specific identities and cultures and particular needs. And his view of politics, having done one of those devolved jobs, is that really that's not very well understood at Westminster, and that the whole kind of grounding mechanisms of politics need to change in order for that to work. So I think that's going to be a big part of his agenda. I can see two potential risks with it, though. The first is it doesn't really rank very highly on like voters' orders of priorities. If you ask voters what are the most important issues of the day, they don't tend to say an over-centralised government is a big direct problem.
You surprised me, Rob.
Yeah, it's a process thing which doesn't excite the average voter. But the other issue is, and we've seen this May, Sophie, he will potentially be handing substantial power to his political enemies. That's part of the game if you're doing devolution. Some of these mayors will be Reform mayors or Conservative mayors or Green mayors. So he's giving power away from his allies in Westminster and to his opponents. That comes with risks.
So interesting. We're going to really see, I think, that play out in the coming months and years even ahead as well. Rob Ford, thank you very much indeed. Great to have you with us. Well, as you've probably seen, we can now bring you those pictures from inside the room in that central London location where we're going to hear from Andy Burnham shortly. Sam Coates is there, of course, our Deputy Political Editor. Sam, what are we expecting?
Welcome to another part of the cauldron, Sophie, where the Labour family is gathering. You can see them potentially behind me. Labour MPs, cabinet ministers, member of the party's ruling national executive, trade union leaders, all here because in a matter of minutes, the transfer of power for the Labour leadership is going to take place. That regeneration, as it were, will come just a few moments after 12 o'clock, where they will read out the result of the leadership contest. Look, nobody's under any illusion. There's only really ever been one contestant, one candidate in this race. That's Andy Burnham. He got 379 of the 403 Labour MPs nominating him. Only one MP nominated somebody else. Every single trade union that's affiliated with the Labour Party choosing Andy Burnham as well, and lots of the socialist societies. So a really essentially unanimous verdict from the Labour family that Andy Burnham should be the person replacing Keir Starmer in a few minutes' time as Labour leader. And then on Monday, as follows from that, Andy Burnham will go to the palace, meet the King, and at that point become Prime Minister as well. Certainty in terms of who they have nominated, but on a campaign based almost entirely on vibes. And I've been going around the room behind me talking about Andy Burnham's campaign based on vibes, not any real indication of the hard trade-offs and the difficult decisions, how he may fall, or even who might be on his cabinet. I've been talking to David Blunkett, who said actually campaigning on vibes is exactly what the country needs right now. I was talking to Dawn Butler. I was trying to get her to comment on the suggestions that Shabana Mahmood might be, as soon as Monday, the Chancellor. And again, she refused to endorse that choice. If it was, she said, we need change in the Labour Party, very much suggesting that that wouldn't be her ideal for the person who goes into number 11. All of that is a mark of just how little all the people behind me who have endorsed Andy Burnham know about what's coming next. Really, for the last couple of weeks, it's been evident that there's only been one person who's going to succeed Keir Starmer, and him and his Chief of Staff, James Purnell, and his close aide, the MP Louise Haigh, have been holed up in an office in Westminster trying to construct a programme for government, a cabinet, a government agenda, and a grid, as it were, a timetable of announcements for the first couple of weeks and the first 100 days. But they have kept that very tight, which is why we know so little about what's coming next. But that hasn't stopped the Labour Party enthusiastically throwing its weight behind Andy Burnham. I asked Dawn Butler why that was. If they know so little, why go for him? And her answer was simple. She said, it's the optimism that he brings when he's doing the job, the hope that it brings. And there, implicit, and you can see it in outline, is the criticism of Keir Starmer, that he didn't have that hope and that sort of touch with the public that many of the people here feel that you need to be the Labour leader. Now, today's event, you can see the seats filling up behind me, had something of the feel, let's call it what it is for many parents in the country today. It's a sort of leavers' assembly, saying goodbye to Keir Starmer and then wishing everybody a happier future. Yet Keir Starmer is not here. This is a goodbye without the current principal. For another 20 minutes, he still is the Labour Party leader, yet he has not turned up to this special conference. I think technically he's coming back from Ukraine. We saw that yesterday when he was interviewed by our own Beth Rigby. But today, somehow, magically, the timetable just did not allow him to turn up to this special conference. So he has cleared the way for Andy Burnham, who'll give a speech of about 10 minutes at about 10:12 after we hear from Shabana Mahmood and we hear from Lucy Powell. So this is Andy Burnham's day, but there is a Keir Starmer-shaped hole at the heart of this event, so no ability to say goodbye to him. We will hear from him on Monday as he issues some brief remarks on the steps of Downing Street before going to the palace, but no real desire, I suspect, from him to spend too much longer in the public eye after what has undoubtedly been a bruising period, even if, as he said to Beth, he's going out with pride. So we've got just a few minutes left until the event starts at the top of the hour, where that handover of the leadership of the Labour Party takes place. At that point, Andy Burnham will be the leader of a party with a clear majority in Parliament, and therefore the King can call him on Monday to be the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. It's a slightly odd constitutional setup, but that is what we have got. Will he give us many answers in the speech that he's about to give? We will see. It looks to me from the extracts released in advance, it's more based on vibes rather than on policy. He'll talk about a need to pivot to authentic Labour. again, an implicit criticism of Keir Starmer, who perhaps did not, in the argument of Andy Burnham that we'll hear in a few minutes, adhere to Labour values enough in the 2 years after he became Prime Minister. But will we get a sense of the hard trade-offs? Will we get a sense of the names of who's going to be in his cabinet? Perhaps not, because there are a lot of decisions to be made by him and his team, and we haven't really got that much of a sniff of them, Sophie. But in a fractured political environment, too often five-party politics, five parties slugging it out to get the advantage. Actually being a better political communicator, being able to unite politicians of your own stripe may just be the tonic that the Labour Party needs to get back on the front foot after a bruising couple of years and series of electoral defeats. It really was that Makerfield by-election result where Andy Burnham won not by a small margin, but absolutely comprehensively, squeezing the votes of all the other progressive parties, the Greens and the Liberal Democrats, getting everybody to unite behind him against reform that delivered that victory. It is whether he can repeat that trick for the rest of the country that he needs to demonstrate to his party. We had that polling a couple of hours ago suggesting that the first electoral test that Andy Burnham will face will be in Greater Manchester to replace him as the Metro Mayor, and already Bev Craig, the Labour candidate, looks like she's in pole position on that with a decent lead in that YouGov poll. I talked to her. She's taking nothing for granted here. But if that's the case, I think that will also be a fillip for the incoming Prime Minister. But Reform, of course, putting up a strong challenge. So a big moment, lots of known unknowns, but also a country waiting to hear how the tone and the style of the man who will be, from Monday, the next Prime Minister.
Sam Coates, thank you very much indeed. Sam Coates there in the cauldron, in the room where it is all going to unfold, of course, in under 10 minutes' time now. We'll hop back to Sam just as soon as anything does. But in the meantime, we are joined by Kelly Donaldson, the chief political commentator at the iPaper, and also by our very own Lucy McDade, political correspondent as well. So we're awaiting Andy Burnham's speech. What we have had is a tweet from Andy Burnham, which I think perhaps sets up some of the main messages he's going to be making later. This is the tweet. He says, the next few days are about more than changing who governs Britain. They're about changing how Britain is governed. Katie, what do you make of it?
I mean, hard to disagree with, but what does it tell us? I mean, thanks, Andy. You know, great, more vibes. More vibes. I'm getting a bit sort of sick of vibes, actually. Like, I think, OK, you can have today, OK, a vibe speech, but by Monday or Tuesday, I want to see some proper policy.
Yeah, I guess that is the criticism so far, isn't it? And look, he is slightly hamstrung because there is also a Prime Minister who is still in the job. So it doesn't want to seem presumptuous, obviously. But at some point, we're going to have to know a little bit more about what the guy who is going to be Prime Minister on Monday is going to do. Lucy?
Yeah, characteristically ambiguous, wasn't it, that post there? I mean, he's alluding there to a number of things, I suppose, that he's pointed out. You know, we will undoubtedly hear more from him about devolution, this idea that he wants every postcode across the UK to feel this growth. When you speak to people close to Andy Burnham and people who are helping him kind of shape his team, they talk a lot about kind of like community-driven politics, people feeling pride in their own local areas. And no doubt as soon as he gets in, he will announce kind of what those powers for local areas will be. That's the thing, you know, we are talking about devolution, more powers for local areas. We don't yet know what that means. Does that mean they'll have more of their own tax revenue to spend? They'll be able to set taxes, you know, what else? And I don't think we will necessarily get it today. He will also talk about culture within the Labour Party. And again, he's kind of alluding to that there, maybe when he talks about how the country is governed. Under Keir Starmer, a lot of the complaints from Labour backbenchers was that they just didn't feel like they could really say what they think. They didn't feel listened to. They didn't really feel that valued. He is saying he's going to change all of that. But the issue that we've got is that, you know, we keep going back to saying, well, you know, it's all well and good saying this, but until you actually do it, there's not much we can scrutinise. And we're just getting to a point where that's getting a little bit exhausting.
Yeah. The devolution thing, I think, is really interesting because this is what Andy Burnham is about, right? This is his vision. Devolution, devolving power, community-led politics, like you say. And I think what's interesting is, you know, people from the business community that I've spoken to actually seem pretty pro this, right? You know, so the British Chambers of Commerce, for example, director was saying to me, actually, they think it's quite a good idea. Paul Johnson, we heard from earlier, who says that actually he thinks it is quite a good idea on balance as well. But it is also quite risky because if you're devolving power to people, he's going to be devolving power to quite a lot of reform councils as well, right?
Yes, absolutely. And yes, you're right. And I'm yet to see how this sort of works in practice. I mean, there's a kind of natural tension. For instance, if you have a nationally mandated target for building social homes, social housing, then how does that fit with what... Are you going to put checks and balances on what you allow local councils and local regional authorities to do? I think there's a bit of detail that needs to be fleshed out there. But yes, I mean, most people you talk to say, actually, this is a good idea. Local people know what's best for them and will champion in their areas. So I don't think that's particularly controversial, actually.
The one possible challenge with it, and I've heard this a little bit from Labour backbenchers who are a little sceptical, is that what we've seen so far from devolution in these mayoral authorities that we see set up across the country is that they largely focus and benefit on these urban areas, cities, and you have kind of rural towns and villages on the periphery who don't get those benefits. So when it comes to bus routes, for example, you'll get a load of investment into buses in a city centre, but you don't get the routes going out to rural areas. Well, what Andy Burnham is saying is that he's not going to do that and everywhere's going to feel it, and especially when you want to see economic growth. You want to see people being able to get to work in their city on good public transport. So we'll see how that plays out and whether or not we kind of... At the moment, we're in this weird stage, aren't we, where Labour backbenchers are being really honest all the time about what they make of different policy and different announcements, and we'll see over the next few weeks and months whether that continues or whether they again kind of feel like they can't really say what they really think about stuff.
So a bit of a rundown about what we're expecting. We are 5 minutes away from 12 o'clock, which is when it all begins. Holly Ridley, we're expecting to speak first, the General Secretary of the Labour Party, Lucy Powell, the Deputy Leader then, Shabana Mahmood, the chair of the NEC, is also expecting to be speaking before the main event, the coronation of Andy Burnham. No one else ran against him, so it was pretty clear pretty quickly that this guy was going to end up in number 10 by Monday. Let's go back to the room, shall we? We can bring back Sam Coates in. The build-up is really beginning now, isn't it, Sam?
It is. Everyone's just been told to take their seats. The music has begun. A slight hush has descended, so they've just jacked up the music to make sure it doesn't feel like there's an awkward silence. But you can see the Labour family behind me. This is Labour gathering for the big moment, as you say. In just a few minutes' time, the Labour leadership will regenerate from Keir Starmer to Andy Burnham. Just walking into the room was soon-to-be Lord Sadiq Khan, Mayor of London, somebody who I think is close to Andy Burnham, a fellow mayor for so many years. He wandered straight over to Neil Kinnock, Lord Kinnock, the former Labour leader. I think he's the only former Labour leader to be here in the room, and the pair shared a moment before taking their seats. I was talking to Neil Kinnock myself. I said to him, is the Andy Burnham project going to work? And he replied, yes, of course it is. That's the response that you would expect from me. Mostly, you are getting Labour MPs, Labour officers for the Labour Party saying that the reason that they think that Andy Burnham represents, you know, let's be crude about it, an upgrade on Keir Starmer is because he provides a hope and an optimism and a way of communicating with people that Keir Starmer, frankly, never really had at any point when he was Labour leader in opposition or for the 2 years that he was Prime Minister. He has a sort of an easygoing manner about him that does at this stage seems to bring people with him. We saw that in Makerfield. Potentially we're seeing that in the polling for the Greater Manchester Metro Mayor, where there seems to be a little bit of an Andy Burnham bounce. And it's that human skill that has led the people in this room to choose Andy Burnham by overwhelming acclamation. I mean, talk about landslides, 379 of the 403 Labour MPs, every single affiliated trade union, each one of them backing Andy Burnham, almost no dissent. In fact, one Labour MP backed a different candidate, but even the person they backed is an Andy Burnham supporter. So you can see just how much the party that is sitting now behind me has gathered behind one guy, but they do not know what the difficult stuff looks like. what the trade-offs look like. Will he go big on social care early on, something that he's campaigned on for 16 years, or will that be part because there isn't any money? Where will he find the cash for defence, which he says is the top priority? How will he go about delivering on this devolution promise, handing powers and money to the regions, when that could actually gum up the system with a big Whitehall reorganisation for the better part of 2 years, meaning that people's lives don't get better? We don't have a sense of that, nor do we have a sense really of who the top cabinet names are. We think that maybe Shabana Mahmood, who is chair of the National Executive Committee and currently Home Secretary, will end up being next door to Andy Burnham in number 11. You can hear the music suddenly cut. But we just do not know. So a lot of known unknowns, but for the moment, this is a Labour family gathering to celebrate a moment, try and avoid looking back at the past where they knifed his predecessor, and celebrate a moment where a new Prime Minister could put the Labour Party back on the front foot again. Sophie.
Sam, thank you very much indeed. We are just minutes away now from the moment when Andy Burnham, MP for Makerfield, is going to become leader of the Labour Party, paving the way for Monday, when he will become Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. It's something that he's coveted for a long time now. It's the third time he's run for the Labour leadership. And really, after he won that by-election so resoundingly, there was only going to be one answer to the question of who was going to win this race. It was going to be Andy Burnham. It was inevitable. Very quickly, of course, the question will become a different one. It will be, what does this man want to do with the country? What is his vision? We know a bit of that. We know, of course, that he wants to devolve power away from Westminster. He wants to, in his own words, not change just what politics is done, but how politics is done as well. He wants to speak up to people in regions of the country that he feels have been neglected by an overly centralised government. To do that, of course, he needs to bring his party with him. At the minute, he is at the pinnacle of his power. He has swept the board when it comes to support from his own MPs. Only one single MP not nominating him for the leadership and nominating someone else. This is a man who is all-powerful right now. But very, very soon, of course, he will have to start making the decisions that all politicians have to do. The decisions that will mean upsetting someone, the decisions that will mean choosing one side over another, because that is politics. And that is going to be the real test of Andy Burnham, the man who has had a successful career in Westminster, of course, but really forged his political identity somewhere else. He forged it in Manchester, with the birth of Manchesterism and Burnhamism at the same time as well. How will he be able to translate that into Westminster? Will he be able to do it successfully? Will he be able to bring his party with him in order to make the change that he says the country requires? And then, of course, how do you deliver change, which he's promised, without the question of mandate, without straying too far from the election manifesto that legitimised this Labour Party and this Labour Party of government as well? A lot of questions to be asked, and I think we're going to start getting the answers to them in the moments and the days ahead as we await in the central London location, in this cauldron, speeches from the man you can see at the back there, Andy Burnham. In front of him, Lucy Powell and Shabana Mahmood. They're speaking as their roles of Deputy Leader of the Labour Party and Chair of the National Executive Committee. Two people, of course, expecting to get a job in that cabinet as well. Lucy Powell. Let's listen.
Welcome.
conference. Welcome to this special conference here at the fantastic Congress House. Isn't it great to be here today in this historic building? We're here for a special conference. It feels like the sort of last day of term a bit today, doesn't it? It's kind of non-uniform day. Not for you today, Andy. Maybe we'll go and have a water fight later out the back if anyone's up for that. But we're here to announce who is going to be the next Labour leader. I can feel the tension in the air. The anticipation is rising. I know you're all looking for those special clues. Who's got their lanyard on? Who's got the tie on? Are their legs crossed? Well, all will be revealed very soon. It feels a bit like the tension we all felt on Wednesday night, watching England play Argentina. I know. Wouldn't it have been nice if that was 369-1 on Wednesday night? But alas, it wasn't. And we don't have a World Cup final to look forward to, but we do have a new chapter, a new era of the Labour Party to look forward to. But before we turn the page, I just want to take a moment to consider the last chapter and pay a few respects, and I hope you will all join me in doing that. First of all, can I thank and pay my respects to Keir Starmer. That's really nice. And his legacy will be of the guy who helped save the Labour Party. He took us from that historic defeat and just 4 years later took us to that historic election victory. And we thank him for that. And that meant that we had a really strong Labour government that was able to deliver on our Labour values. And he, under his leadership, he did just that. Lifting 500,000 children out of poverty, real wages rising and interest rates falling, restoring Britain's standing around the world as a force for good and change, ending no-fault evictions, rail back into public ownership and giving our mayors powers over buses, of which I'm sure we'll hear more about. Day one rights to sick pay and finally ending 0 hours contracts. And just this week, Hillsborough Law. What a moment that was. And finally, ending the hereditary principle in the House of Lords. That is just to name a few. That is a legacy he can be very, very proud of. And can I also thank Keir and his team for the way in which they've conducted themselves in recent weeks, with dignity and with grace. Changing leader is never easy, but I'm really pleased and proud with the way that we have gone through this process as one Labour team. And that wouldn't have been possible without all of you in this room today. I want to say a big thank you as well to the candidates team. Still a candidate. Andy Burnham, you and your team have really been incredibly respectful and generous throughout this process. Thank you for that. And thank you to all the Labour Party roll holders, the elected representatives, our trade union colleagues for helping to steer this ship into steadier waters. Thank you for that too. But most of all, can I thank our fantastic General Secretary, Holly Ridley, and all the Labour staff around the country. Times of change are never easy. They can be very, very anxiety-making, as we all are well aware of. But you have been solid and steadfast, all of you, every single Labour Party member. And I strongly believe that we have come through this process stronger, more united, and showing the very, very best version of ourselves to the country. And this gives us a very strong platform as we enter this next chapter, this new era for Labour. People are crying out for change. They're crying out for hope, for agency over their lives. That's what Labour governments and Labour Prime Ministers are elected to deliver on. And I'm really confident with the foundations that we have laid, with the strong and united Labour team that we have, with our values, with our ideas, with our drive, and with our new leader at the helm, that we can rise to that challenge and we can change people's lives for the better. And we can, in doing so, restore faith in politics, restore trust in Labour. So, conference, let's be proud, let's be loud. Together we can do this. Thank you very much. So now, without further ado, can I introduce our returning officer and our fantastic General Secretary, Holly Ridley. Thank you.
That was brilliant. Well done.
Thank you, Lucy, and good afternoon, everyone. It is always a privilege to see our party gathered together. The fact that we meet in Congress House, a place that embodies the enduring partnership between the Labour Party and the trade union movement. It is a fitting reminder that our strength comes not simply from the breadth of our movement, but from the values that unite us: solidarity, fairness, and a shared commitment to improving the lives of working people. I'm Holly Ridley, the General Secretary of the Labour Party and returning officer for the Labour Party leadership election. In a brief moment, I will hand over to Shabana Mahmood as Chair of the National Executive Committee to announce the new leader of the Labour Party. But first, I want to say a thank you to the Procedures Committee of the NEC for their leadership in overseeing this process and ensuring that it has been conducted fairly. And to the Labour Party staff for their professionalism and hard work throughout this period. But before we can announce the result, the returning officer needs to read a formal declaration. As returning officer, I formally declare that I am satisfied that this election has been carried out in the manner which is fair and fully compliant with the Labour Party rules. So, without further ado, I will now introduce Shabana Mahmood, Chair of Labour's National Executive Committee, who will announce the new leader of the Labour Party. Good luck.
Thank you very much, Holly. As Chair of the National Executive Committee of the Labour Party, I have the honour of announcing the result of the Labour Party Leadership Contest 2026. This is the formal bit. Following the resignation of Sir Keir Starmer as Labour's leader, the NEC set out the procedures and timetable for a contest to seek his replacement. The returning officer has informed me that the requirements of that contest have now been met. It's hardly a nail-biter, folks. And so, despite the efforts of a lone MP, I can confirm that there was only one eligibly nominated candidate. Following the period of nominations by Labour MPs, one candidate received 379 nominations. Having met the threshold of 20% of the Parliamentary Labour Party, they were eligible to proceed to the next stage. One other candidate received one nomination and is not eligible to proceed. Among the affiliated trade unions and socialist societies, the one eligible candidate received 23 nominations in total. This included nominations from all 11 trade unions, comprising well over 5% of the affiliated membership. There being no other eligibly nominated candidate, it is therefore my honour to declare that the duly elected leader of the Labour Party is Andy Burnham.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you so much, friends. What a moment. And what backing you've given me. All our affiliated trade unions, all our socialist societies, 379 of our MPs, and I don't need to say commiserations to Catherine West, because she backed me too. Thanks, Catherine. All of them heard the call from the people of Makerfield on behalf of forgotten places everywhere up and down this country for a return of the Labour they once knew. And now we answer that call. We will be that version of Labour again. We are united today, as Holly said, as Lucy said and Shabana said, and thank you so much for your words. We are united, and we put the power that comes from that unity at the service of people and places who have been waiting too long for politics to let them hope again. And that's what we're going to do, everybody. We're going to give them hope back. This is a proud moment you have given me and my family today, and an emotional one. But it is one for which I am ready. I am ready. Ready to lead and to build on the foundation laid by one person more than any other. Under Keir Starmer's leadership, we went from our worst defeat to one of the best victories in our history. Keir put Labour back in a position to change people's lives, and that is what we have been doing these last 2 years. New rights for workers and for renters. NHS waiting lists falling for the first time in years. In fact, since I was Health Secretary, I think, so well done, Wes. Rail back under public control. Britain's reputation rebuilt on the world stage. And as Lucy said, just this week, the biggest rebalancing of the scales of justice this country has ever seen. Today we thank Keir for his service to our party and to our country. Ten years ago, he and I worked together, drawing up the original Hillsborough law in my office in the aftermath of the second Hillsborough inquest. And I drew on all of his legal expertise when I presented that bill to Parliament. To be in Parliament on Tuesday, when Keir delivered on his promise to the Hillsborough families and all of the other campaigners who were part of the Hillsborough Law Now campaign. A promise to end the cover-up culture in this country, to pass power from the authorities to ordinary people, and to prevent anyone in future going through what the Hillsborough families did. It felt to me like life coming full circle. My journey to this stage today began in earnest at Anfield in April 2009. The COP made me confront the fact that this country does not work for working class communities like the city of my birth. In fact, it's worse. It turned its back on them. Political power was used viciously against them to protect vested interests. Economic power cruelly stripped with the deindustrialization of the 1980s, as it was against so many places up and down the land. And let us never forget, these are the very same places that built this labour movement, this trade union movement where we are today, Paul. Those are the places, but they were the places that were done down. This labour movement, the trade union movement, was forged in the steelworks and ironworks of Sheffield, Scunthorpe, Port Talbot and Teesside, in the coalfields of South Wales, Central Scotland, Nottinghamshire, Derbyshire, Yorkshire and Lancashire, in the mills across the Pennines, west and east, in the shipyards on the Clyde and on the Tyne, and in the dockyards of Liverpool and here in London. The people of these proud places made labour. But we have to ask ourselves, just as I had to ask myself at Anfield that day, have we been good enough for them? Change starts with honesty. We must recognise that this generation of politicians, myself included, have failed to challenge a political culture and an economic model that simply doesn't work well enough for ordinary people. 4 decades of the neoliberalism that began in the 1980s have not been kind to the places that built our party, nor to the communities across the UK in rural and coastal areas. So we pledge today to them to be better. And as I accept the honour of leading this party forward, I will tell you about 5 things I will do to make us so, to make us better. First, I will work relentlessly to build a culture of one Labour team, because change starts with us. We won't beat Britain's new right if we are consumed by infighting and pulling in different directions. That is, and always has been, an indulgence that falls heaviest on the people who need Labour most. Fighting to eradicate it and the insidious briefing culture that goes along with it will characterise my leadership. In future, when a Burnhamite walks into a bar, as many Burnhamites are known to do, talking about you, Kevin. In future, when a Burnhamite walks into a bar, I want the barman to say, "Great to see you. We don't like factional politics in here." Now, you might know, and your reaction suggests so, there's a different version of that joke told by people who put internal politics before anything else. But here's the truth. Their factionalism has bedevilled us. Today we move beyond it. I have supported all our Labour leaders in my lifetime because I believe a united Labour Party and Labour movement is the best hope for our country, and I know you believe that too, as do our members up and down the land. And I will lead this party in that spirit, not seeking to suspend or punish members who have principled views that may be different from mine, but building unity by respecting all shades of opinion. And contrary to what you may keep on reading, I haven't made any decisions yet about who will be in that top team, but I will soon. And when I have, you will see it reflects all parts of our party, all communities, and it will reflect your own place within this great party of ours. A stronger, more united Labour Party lifting up a stronger and more united Britain. And this brings me to my second change. I will work to build a new politics. The country is crying out for it. We might enjoy the point scoring against others. The public don't. How can politicians point fingers when living standards are falling and politics as a whole isn't working for them? It infuriates them and makes them switch off. In Makerfield, I decided to make a break with this. I said we hadn't been good enough. I told people what I would do to fix it. You know what? People started to listen again. They gave us a fair hearing, as the great British public always do. And then another chance. But let's be honest, everybody, this is a last chance to change, and we must take it together, united together. Tell people what we will do, rather than always going on about others. And if we do more of that, let's see if we can get the ear of the country as well, not just Makerfield. Let's take a problem-solving rather than a point-scoring approach. Let's have the courage to fix the big things that politics has neglected, like social care, and have the conviction to go out there together and argue for our plans. And let's have the self-confidence to find common ground with other parties where we can. By seeking more consensus, we may just find the change we make is more lasting. We may find our political discourse in this country becomes that little bit less toxic, and we should be working to achieve that too. And the turbulence of the last decade may not quite feel as so inevitable as it does today. My third change is our political direction. Yes, we will work with other parties where we can, but doing so from the clarity of knowing exactly where we stand. As your leader, I will set a direction that is distinctively Labour. We won't try to out-green the Greens or out-reform reform, or doing what we've done in the past of wearing too many Tory clothes. Let me tell you, I'm quite happy that Kemi doesn't approve of my wardrobe choices, because I'm not keen on theirs either. From here, we do it differently. We win by being us. Boldly, confidently, authentically us. Labour. That's how we win. I want people to understand the thinking behind the political direction I set, so people can see the decisions we take and the reasons why. I am clear, Britain took a series of wrong turns in the 1980s. Political power was centralised and economic power was privatised. The country surrendered control of the essentials: housing, water, energy, transport, and left people exposed to higher costs. That in turn led to the concentration of more wealth and power in the hands of fewer people and fewer places. Large parts of Britain were deindustrialised without the power to set new ambitions for themselves. Proud British towns, now a shadow of what they once were, and high streets in decline, so common up and down the country. Slowly, at times imperceptibly, over 4 decades, political and economic power drained away out of our communities in every region and nation of the UK. If local places don't control something as basic as a bus service, how can they connect people to opportunity and turn things around? If the sell-off of council homes leaves the country chasing rents in the private rented sector through the benefits system, and paying for temporary accommodation for thousands of families as they have to do here in London and elsewhere across the country. How then will we find the money to invest in prevention and improve people's lives? The truth is we can't. And if we don't have sufficient public control over the cost of the essentials, how can we have control over inflation, public spending, and the rest of the economy? The right used the phrase, take back control, but they are the ones who gave it away in the first place. If we want an economy and a country that works for all people and places, which to me should always be at the very core of Labourism, then it requires a new path to the one we've been on for the last 40 years. The government I lead will confidently lay that path out starting next week. And that is why this change today is the most significant change moment in our politics for 40 years. It will take us to a country where life is more affordable and all people and places are lifted from where they are now. And conference, this is my fourth commitment to you. I mean it when I say all places. I will be a leader for the North, the South, the East and the West, for Scotland, Wales and for Northern Ireland. Yes, the north of England has given me so much, everything, in fact. And in return, I have sought to give it the strongest voice I could. That was my job. But now I do the same for everywhere. Because I see the same challenges everywhere I look. The same challenges can be found in the southwest as the northwest, or in East Anglia as the northeast. And this is the moment to speak for all parts of the country and unite people in a common cause. I love every part of this country. I love all the different accents, all of the different traditions, some of the football clubs. But no, I love every part of it. But I also know they can all be more than they are. And that's what kind of drives me in politics, the kind of feeling that they should be more than they are. The feeling that kids shouldn't have to leave those places, those proud places, to get on in life. We should make them more than they are, help them take power to be more than they are. And this brings me to my fifth and final promise. We will take power back from Westminster and Whitehall and give it to the place where you live. More power over life's essentials so you can make them work better and more affordable for people, just as my good friend Steve Rotherham is doing today as we are here meeting at the TUC in London. He is at a meeting, chairing a meeting of the Liverpool City Region Combined Authority, and he is presenting to that meeting a plan to put the entire Merseyrail network back in public ownership by 2028. A plan to cut fares, make trains run on time, and a railway run in the interests of the passengers, not shareholders. We want to give your area more power to build the council and social homes that you desperately need for those families I was talking about a moment ago. More power to improve your high street, backing local businesses, such as the pubs and the shops that bring them to life. And make no mistake, everybody, I will be a pro-business leader of the Labour Party, as I was a pro-business mayor of Greater Manchester. We turn places round together, and that is the way we ran in Manchester, and we will take to the whole country. And as part of that, more power to re-industrialise and to build an education system based on parity between academic and technical education, to give every young person growing up in different parts of the country a path in life to university or to a work placement, to apprenticeship and into a good job. Hope for every young person is what we are going to be about. And this is it. When you add all of that together, a plan to give people more power, to bring back the hope we have all been missing too much, and people are looking for us to deliver, and we will. So, everybody, you're here and you're sharing this moment with me. Thank you so much for being with me. I've had a long journey through politics to get to this moment, as you all know, because so many of you in here and so many others watching this on television know what they did to help me along my way and knock me into shape as they needed to do. I want to, if I may, just single out three. I was his parliamentary private secretary in my first experience of the front bench, but he has been the truest mentor to me in the decades since, and it's just wonderful to be with you, Lord Blunkett, David, on this special day. I would say he taught me everything I know, but no, he did. Certainly not about football. But it is wonderful to have you at this moment with me, David. Can I also say to Dame Margaret Beckett, you were a wonderful friend to me and guide throughout my time in the cabinet. You were always there for me to give me that nudge that I needed. And similarly, as with David, I am so proud, honoured that you are with us today. And sitting next to Margaret, for those of you who want somebody to blame, he is the man you can hold to account. He is the man that fired up a young Andy Burnham in the northwest of England in the mid-1980s with rhetoric of the kind that remains unmatched, I would say, in modern politics. It has always been something that I treasure, to get a message from him with his advice and the care and the thought he puts into those messages. They mean everything to me. I would not be standing here. I would not have joined this great party of ours in 1985 had it not been for the legend that is Neil Kinnock. It's absolutely brilliant to have you with us today. So many of you here who I can't name, so many watching, have helped me get here. I haven't done it alone. I haven't got everything right, and I'm sorry where I've fallen short. But I have always given it my all, and I always will. Truly, I've given this party everything I've had, but now it's done the same for me. I have listened and learned as I've gone along, you'll be pleased to know. And hopefully, I've got better as a result. You can be sure of this. I know what I believe after 25 years as an elected Labour representative. And I know what I want to do, working with you all. I have a plan. And what I also want you to know is that I won't change. I have a style, it's my style. I will always stay close to the ground, close to the people. Hopefully, still in my season ticket when the new season starts. In Cardiff on Tuesday, brilliant just to meet and chat to people as they came up to speak. I will always stay the same because I draw my strength from people. I hear things, pick up straws in the wind as I was going about Manchester as my job as mayor, and I say to Kevin Lee, who's here today, and I want to thank Kevin, who's been such a staunch supporter and friend for me on this journey. I would bring a little idea from Greg's or the pub or wherever, and he'd say, well, this is hardly from a think tank, what am I meant to do with this? But that's how we did it, just to be close and listen, and that's what I'll do. I'll be out and about in August, in all parts of the UK, definitely in the south, and I'm off to Gravesend later to show I'm for the south too. That's the way I've always done it, and it made me really proud recently. You might call it faint praise, but I took it as very serious praise. Someone said recently, Andy's all right. He's for us. I was so proud of that I made it my slogan in Bakerfield. I am for us, for all of us. And I want people to say once again that Labour are for us. I want that to just fall off people's tongues, and we can do it. We can be that party, the party that puts more power in people's hands, drives good growth in every postcode, and puts hope in every heart, that gets the country pulling together again and moves beyond the divisions of recent years. All people and all places, public and private sectors, in a new sense of unity and common cause. That's my mission as your new leader, to bring back hope. I believe in all of you, and I am confident we can do it. Thank you very much, Andy.
Andy Burnham, now officially leader of the Labour Party. And he's so happy about it, he's doing a little dance on the front of the stage as well. We heard the call of the people of Makerfield for a return of the Labour they once knew. We will be that version of Labour again. He said that decades of politicians, including, by the way, from Labour, failed those proud industrial heartlands that forged Labour. This generation of politicians, he said, have failed to change a political culture and an economic model that does not work well enough for working people. I think the challenge for him now, of course, is that idealism, promising that he would be Andy Burnham for us, for everyone. How does that translate into those difficult political decisions faced by every Prime Minister? But right at this minute, here's a man riding high, third time lucky, leader of the Labour Party, and on Monday, he will be the next Prime Minister. We've got Lucy here, our political correspondent. Lucy, I think perhaps for me, The most touching part of that speech was when he picked out those three Labour giants from the past who have forged his politics. So Neil Kinnock, Welsh Valleys, Margaret Beckett, for so long, the MP there in Derby. And then you, of course, had David Blunkett as well. Sheffield, good old Sheffield Wednesday supporter like me, I love it. But I guess that is the tradition he's trying to paint himself in. The industrial heartland representation of the Labour movement that he thinks have been failed by more recent Labour politicians.
Yeah, there are a couple of times throughout that speech where he addressed exactly that. And actually both of us pointed out, when he pointed out those individuals, that they're also from different parts of the UK, right? And one of the maybe not a criticism, but one of the kind of concerns about an Andy Burnham premiership has been that this is a man who was the mayor of Greater Manchester. He's the MP now for Makerfield. Does he understand Wales, its mining history? Does he understand rural, coastal parts of the southwest, parts of the southeast? There, he made a number of attempts to do that, and by pointing out those people who have been mentors to him, he thanked them all for their advice. He started his political career under their wings. By talking about them, I think it added weight to his pitch, that he will be listening to everybody from all corners of the UK. And, talking about areas that have been let down and returning the party to its core values. That was another thing that really came through.
He was very careful, wasn't he, to say some very generous words about Keir Starmer. But there's a couple of things that does make you think that he is trying to shift away from that mentality, particularly when he's talking about generations of politicians not understanding and failing, to be honest, people from different parts of the UK. He's positioning himself in a different place to Keir Starmer, I guess.
Yeah, and he said as well, one of the the key moments, I think, of that speech was saying, as your leader, I will set a direction that is distinctively Labour. We won't try to out-green the Greens or out-reform. And one of the really big criticisms of Keir Starmer's premiership is that they could not choose a direction. And as a result, they kind of strayed from what their core values were, whether it was trying to pander to voters that had abandoned them for the left, whether it was voters to the right. I mean, some of Shabana Mahmood's immigration reforms, for example, have been seen as ways of pandering to reform voters. Andy Burnham is making it very clear that that is not how they're going to win the next election, and instead they are going to return to Labour values. But the truth is, and this is something that we were just saying off screen, you cannot please everybody. And at the moment, what we're getting from Andy Burnham is this idea that everybody will feel better off under his leadership, that everybody will feel hope, that everybody will kind of engage with politics again. It just doesn't feel possible.
Politics is about choices. It always is about choices. And my own view is that politicians should be more upfront about that, right? Because you have to decide. To govern is to choose, right? That's the whole point.
Yeah, and remember when Keir Starmer won the general election, they actually now, people that were under Keir Starmer in cabinet now are quite honest and say we were too frank about how difficult things were going to be, about the challenge that lay ahead of us. So clearly Andy Burnham isn't doing that, but at the same time there is a middle ground where you need to be honest with people, because to fund everything that he wants to do, surely taxes have to go up somewhere, spending might have to be cut. These are difficult decisions.
Lucy, thanks very much indeed. I also want to bring in, not yet, I'm just being told, Lucy, we're going to go to Ian Byrne in a minute, but in the meantime, I'm actually quite pleased because there is another question I want to ask you.
Yeah.
Which is this. Andy Burnham just then said that he hasn't made any decisions about his cabinet.
Yeah.
I mean, that is ridiculous, isn't it? Surely he must have.
Yes. Well, can I just tell you something? So Neil Kinnock was in the crowd there. He was pointed out by Andy Burnham. I managed to have a brief conversation with him fairly recently, and I said to him, because, what a person to kind of pick the brains of. And I said to him, is it really realistic that Andy Burnham hasn't made any decisions on his cabinet yet?
Yeah.
Isn't that just ridiculous? And funnily enough, he did say, politics can change so quickly. The danger with making your decisions too far in advance is that, too many things can change. You have too much time to be influenced by what other people are thinking. And so maybe you do make them fairly last minute. However, we're 3 days from when he becomes Prime Minister. He also spoke about briefings coming to an end under him. You know, this idea that, you know, people behind the scenes pitch stuff in different papers to kind of softly land an idea. And, you know, I mean, tell me that there hasn't been any briefings over the past few weeks about who's going to be in Andy Burnham's cabinet. They might not be coming directly from the man himself, but, you know, I think he's making a lot of promises that feel in a world of politics that are quite difficult to keep. But on that point about the cabinet, I mean, it's a lot of work if you're going to decide who your Chancellor is over the weekend.
Yeah, come on. I reckon he knows.
Because it says so much about your policy direction, and surely a lot of those decisions have been made. You would like to think so?
Lucy, thanks very much indeed. Right, let's go to Ian Byrne, shall we, who joins us now from Derby. Great to have you on the programme. What did you make of Andy Burnham's speech?
Good afternoon, Sophie. West Derby, it's Liverpool, West Derby. People are probably confused saying Derby.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's what I've got in my auto cue. I have to say.
No problem, Sophie.
Whereabouts are you then? You're Liverpool?
Liverpool, West Derby, yeah.
Oh, there we go. Definitely not a different sort of derby. Anyway, thanks for that clarification.
Derby, anyway. No, it was a breath of fresh air, Sophie. It was full of hope, optimism. I thought he articulated extremely well some of the issues that we've got in the country. I've just been around the country with the Right to Food Commission, and the hopelessness that come through that commission was palpable. And I think Andy's diagnosis is spot on, but it's finding solutions now, which is going to be interesting in the next part of this journey.
Yeah, the solutions is interesting, isn't it? Because obviously, I thought it was very compelling, to be honest, when he talked about parts of the UK that have been failed and left behind by generations of politicians. And there's an awful lot of people who think devolution is a great idea. But I guess it's how you do it, right? Because, I mean, look, there's a lot of reform councils. Are you happy giving more power to those guys?
Yeah, I think it's going to be super interesting. You know, he's a massive believer in devolution, like many of us are, and putting power in the hands of people. So I think it's going to be fascinating. You know, I think over the next couple of weeks, he's going to have to lay out how that's going to work, because we're talking about the Prime Minister from Monday, and everybody will want to know how that's going to affect them. So, yeah, I just think the speech was pitched wonderfully well. That hope, I think people have feed off that. I think they'll feel hope, which is what we've wanted to feel for a long time in politics. But as you said, next week, I think once he starts laying out his suite of policies, well, then that's when it's going to be extremely interesting. And I'm really looking forward to hearing that as well.
One of the big decisions he's got to make, of course, is who his Chancellor is. And this isn't just about personalities, it matters because this sets out the economic trajectory of this government, right? I'm not going to ask you about names because I know you'll dodge that, but what do you want to see from the next Chancellor?
Well, it's not me, and I won't dodge it. I firmly believe it should be Ed Miliband. I think Miliband should be the person who is Chancellor, and I think I've told Andy that as well. I think he's the ideal person to lead this change for the country. But we'll see. It'll be Andy's decision. He said he hasn't made that yet. He's getting lots of competing voices telling him different things. But let's just hope he makes the right decision, because that's going to be absolutely crucial and fundamental to whether, as Andy said, this last shot works.
I mean, the chat in Westminster is that Miliband's lost out to Shabana Mahmood.
Yeah, well, I'm reading the same stuff as you, so you probably know far more than I do with your contacts, but I'm just reading the same things. So, as I said, we'll see. You know, whenever it is Shabana, well then, let's see what sort of policies come forward. But it's so crucial that we have a Chancellor that is willing to take on vested interests, because Andy's just diagnosed that the economic system for the last 40 years hasn't worked for people like communities in West Derby, which it hasn't. So that decision is so fundamentally important, and we'll all be waiting to see what happens on Monday. I think Monday's going to announce his cabinet.
Yeah, I know, exactly. We're all waiting on tenterhooks, aren't we, to see the kind of first decisions of the new Prime Minister. You're obviously really buoyed up by the speech he's given and some of the things that Andy Burnham's been saying. Do you think he's going to be an improvement on Keir Starmer?
He's got to be. You know, simple fact of the matter is he's got to be. You know, he just spoke there, you know, really well. Obviously, I've known Andy a long time with the stuff that we've done together with Hillsborough, and you know, he's always been a man of his word. And I think what he said today, he wouldn't have said that just to gain support and public support. He believes in it. He said he's got a plan. He said he's got an ideology now, you know, which he believes in, which resulted in, you know, the success of Manchester. So, you know, and like many others, we're just genuinely looking forward to hopefully a Labour Party that pulls together. It's not sectarian. It's not that if you've You know, if you've done something wrong, you're out on the naughty step for 3 years, or you get suspended for voting to try and eradicate child poverty like some of us did. But I'm really hopeful, Sophie. I'm hopeful that he moves forward. And as I said, he's a man of his word. So let's hope he does what he said in that speech. Because if he does what he says in that speech, the country will be in a different place in a few years.
Great to talk to you. Thanks for the straight answers as well. Don't always get it when interviewing politicians, so that's what we like to see. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Sophie.
Ian Burnham speaking to us from West Derby in Liverpool rather than in Derbyshire. We're joined now by Ruth Curtis, Chief Executive of the Resolution Foundation think tank. Great to have you with us. What did you make of Andy Burnham's speech?
Lots of discussion of the sense in which some places have been left behind, and it is certainly true that regional inequality in the UK is high and very, very persistent. But as I think you were talking about earlier, the real question I don't think we've learned a lot about is what he will do when faced with some of the really tough trade-offs in the public finances over the next few years.
Yeah, what do you mean by those tough trade-offs? What is the kind of thing that you point out?
So I think the one to really zoom in on is what choice will he make between public services and taxation? So the Labour government so far has increased tax a lot, and it's increased that spending on departmental public services a lot. And so, but for the rest of this parliament, they had actually left their plans fairly tight. That means, for example, that if Andy Burnham wanted to raise defence spending to, say, 3% of GDP by 2030, if he wanted to keep growing the health budget in line with the sorts of trends we've seen in recent years, then for everything else, there would be about a £10 billion cut in that final year of the Parliament. So the choice that we haven't heard anything about, and that I think will be really crucial, and Andy Burnham and his Chancellor will have to make before the spending review, which either comes in the autumn or early in next year, is this choice between, do they want to put taxes up further in order to have more space to deliver their priorities within public services, or do they want to prioritise the pound in people's pockets that he's talked about, in which case there are some really tough settlements for some departments to come.
You know, the thing that really struck me from Andy Burnham's speech was when he said about the guy who told him, Andy Burnham's all right, he's for us, and how that's how he wants to govern, for us, for the people, for everyone. I guess the problem is you can't please everyone, right? The whole point about politics is choosing. Do you think that's going to be an issue?
Yeah, and I think in, for example, making decisions about taxation or the welfare system, he will have to choose who he wants to prioritise. We've seen over the last couple of decades that, in effect, public spending, both from the welfare system and through services like the NHS, has become more and more concentrated, for example, on the older population. Andy Burnham has said he will, for example, keep the triple lot, which is one of the mechanisms that means that continues to grow. He's also talked about social care, another really important issue, one that particularly affects the older population. Is that going to be his priority, or will it be about working people and people of working age?
Great to have you on the programme. Some really interesting issues and debates coming up, of course. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Sophie.
We've got a new leader of the Labour Party. Andy Burnham. Shock news.
Yeah.
What a surprise.
It is funny sitting here, though, watching this unfold, because, I mean, just months ago, you know, I was sat over in Parliament having conversations with MPs, and, you know, a fair number of them would say about wanting this Andy Burnham to come back to Westminster, but there were so many hurdles that he needed to cross. You know, one of them, and he got rejected from standing in that first by-election in Gorton and Denton because, as you said earlier, the Prime Minister knew exactly what he wanted to do. So the number of steps that he's had to, you know, to climb to get to this point today, it feels kind of surreal, but it also shows the kind of this existential crisis that the Labour Party feels that it's facing.
And it all comes back to one moment, doesn't it? I just remember, you know, waking up and seeing the result of that Makerfield election, emphatic for Andy Burnham, and at that point, it was inevitable.
Yes, because the result, you know, the result was one thing, but actually looking into the greater detail of it, and as you say, just how emphatically he won by, that dictated the direction and what came next. Because, you know, if he only won because of reform and restore, for example, then I think he would have struggled to convince a number of Labour MPs that he was the right person and that he had a mandate. But that win, I think, really gave his supporters and other Labour MPs as well this feeling that he was the person to row behind, because nobody else stood. They, you know, I think for the future of the Labour Party, they felt that they all had to get behind one person. And in the end, it was Andy Burnham.
It was Andy Burnham, and that is it. He's become the leader of the Labour Party. On Monday, of course, he is going to become Prime Minister as well. In that speech, he said, "I will be a leader for the North, the South, the East and the West, for Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland." In other words, not just Manchester. He said decades of politicians have failed those proud industrial heartlands across the country that forged the Labour movement. And it was a man riding high in a room full of supporters. But from Monday, that is when the hard work starts. That's when those difficult decisions will have to be made. Who's going to be in the cabinet? There'll be time today for that dancing, that little jig. But it's going to be a serious Andy Burnham next week. Hello, you're watching a special programme on Sky News. It is 1 o'clock. I'm Sophy Ridge.
The duly elected leader of the Labour Party is Andy Burnham.
An emotional Andy Burnham is officially announced as Labour leader, insisting he's ready to become Prime Minister.
They gave us a fair hearing, as the great British public always do. And then another chance. But let's be honest, everybody, this is a last chance to change, and we must take it together, united together.
Moving into number 10 Downing Street on Monday, Andy Burnham insists he will be a leader for the North, the South, the East and the West. Hello, welcome to our special programme. We're live from Westminster on the day that Andy Burnham has now officially been made leader of the Labour Party. Next week on Monday, he's going to take the keys to number 10 from Keir Starmer as we say farewell to yet another Prime Minister. Well, Andy Burnham, former Manchester Mayor, just delivered a speech. He vowed to give people hope again. He also paid tribute to the last Labour administration, but, you know, he was critical as well. He talked about decades of centralisation failing the regions, those proud industrial heartlands that forged the Labour movement. And he said they'll give them hope again. We'll take you to the speech in a moment, but in the meantime, let's bring you our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, who was in the room. Sam, what did you make of it all?
After 16 years of trying, Sophie, 3 attempts, Andy Burnham is now the Labour leader. On Monday, he will be the Prime Minister. Absolutely overwhelming backing for Andy Burnham from the Labour Party. 379 of the 403 MPs, every single Labour supporting union. You know, this party is now certain. What was interesting in that speech that you heard from Andy Burnham was it was long on values, short on specifics. The question is, what are the hard choices he will make from Monday when he starts in Downing Street? One of his longest-serving, longest-running allies, best friends in politics, joins me now. It's Lucy Powell. She's the deputy leader of the Labour Party. Long on vibes, but short on specifics?
I don't think so. I think what people are crying out for actually is vision, is direction, it's values, and understanding how those things will turn into action. And I actually thought that Andy delivered on all of that. You know, this wasn't the day to set out a 10-point policy plan. People want the storytelling, they want the direction, they want to know the choices that he's going to make, what's going to inform those choices, and I thought he gave that.
But I suppose there's a big question at the heart of his pitch, which we'll find out about on Monday, which is, does he represent doing things differently to Keir Starmer, or is it delivering the same manifesto and more along the same lines? Is it more of the same, or is it change from what we just had?
I think he made clear today that this is change. There is change from... we've laid the foundations, and there's lots of good things in our manifesto that are clear about redistributing power, about making the country work in the interests of ordinary people. But he wants to do that in a much bolder and bigger way. He talked about, and he's talked very, very clear about this, putting powers back into the hands of communities.
Those aren't policies, those are aspirations. What I'm talking about is we don't know any specifics.
Well, no, I think we do. I think he's talked about how that would work, taking the model that he's been able to do in Greater Manchester, where you have those strategic powers, you bring them all together in a place, you can bring together transport, skills, housing, economic development to really change that area. And you could do that in a more profound way than Whitehall can ever do with its kind of initiative-itis and its bits and bobs over here. But he also talked about really rewiring the economy. You know, we've got these utilities and important public services that have for too long worked in the interests of shareholders and vested interests.
I'm not hearing policies. Does he nationalise them? Does he mutualise them?
Yeah.
What I'm saying is we've got a series of aspirations, but we don't know what he's going to be like actually when he goes, even though the Labour Party's overwhelmingly backed him.
I think he gave a very clear sense of direction. And look, we have, as I say, we've got the strong foundations because we have brought rail back into public ownership. We've given mayors the powers they need over buses. We've had a Water Special Measures Act. We've curbed the powers of landlords that will really now stabilise rents for ordinary families. But there's more we can do here, and he's been really talking about that, and I think it's clear what that means.
Listening to him interact with, talk about how he likes to talk to people, get out on the stump, draws strength from engaging with voters. He's very clear on that. He likes to be liked. Is there a bit of a danger with that when you're Prime Minister and you're having to make the toughest decisions in the country?
He likes to be connected and rooted, and I think that is very, very important and powerful in politics. I don't live in London either, and those interactions, living the life that everybody else lives, understanding people's everyday struggles and keeping connected and rooted is actually very, very important in politics. And we go off into the kind of lofty, vaulted kind of rooms of Whitehall at our peril, and I thought he was very, very clear about how he will work in order to make sure that he's keeping in touch with those aspirations, those frustrations, and those challenges that ordinary people have, and making sure he addresses them.
But lofty Whitehall sort of corridors, there are budget constraints, there's laws to pass, there are majorities to be found.
There's choices to be made.
There's choices to be made, and we don't know where he's going to come down on key decisions.
Politics is about choices, absolutely. But in order to guide you with those choices, I think you have to be clear in your values. You have to be clear in your direction. You have to be clear about in whose interests are you serving. And we got all three of those from Andy today: values, direction, purpose, and in whose interests he is serving. And that will guide those choices that are before him, but also make sure that he's able to deliver on that agenda, because I'm a big fan of less is more, to be honest. If you try and do a million different things for a million different people, it might not, no one will see what you're trying to do.
Final question. You're Deputy Leader of the Labour Party. It would be a shame if you weren't Deputy Prime Minister as well then after Monday.
Well, look, I'm elected in my own right. I have my own mandate. On Monday, on Tuesday, this time next year, I'll still be the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party. And I think it's a really important relationship, the leader and the deputy working together, but able to have a slightly different relationship.
Disappointment if you're not Deputy Prime Minister.
I'm not getting into any of these things. I love my job as Deputy Leader. My job is to work to support the leader, to support the whole party, but actually to represent the voice of the party and the communities that we're here to serve. And because I'm directly elected, it gives me a different platform that I can, speak truth to power when I need to. I can have those difficult conversations when I need to, and I'll continue to operate in that way.
Lucy Powell, thank you very much indeed. We heard an extensive speech from Andy Burnham about the style of government that he's going to run. He said there's going to be no briefing. Might be a surprise for those of you who have been following the media in the last few days, as there's a battle on to position people who want to be inside Andy Burnham's cabinet and the people that they don't want to take top positions. Can he really deliver on the lofty rhetoric that we heard in this cauldron in central London here today? We'll find out from Monday when he becomes Prime Minister.
Yeah, we will. Sam Coates, thank you very much indeed. Sam Coates there speaking to all of those big beasts who'd gathered to watch the moment when Andy Burnham officially becomes leader of the Labour Party. It's been inevitable for some time now. It's been inevitable, really, since he won that election in Makerfield, but he is now on the cusp of becoming Prime Minister. Let's take a listen to some of what he said in the last hour.
Thank you so much, friends. What a moment. And what backing you've given me. All our affiliated trade unions, all our socialist societies, 379 of our MPs, all of them heard the call from the people of Makerfield on behalf of forgotten places everywhere up and down this country for a return of the Labour they once knew. And now we answer that call. We will be that version of Labour again. We're going to give them hope back. This is a proud moment you have given me and my family today, and an emotional one. But it is one for which I am ready. I am ready. Ready to lead and to build on the foundation laid by one person more than any other. Under Keir Starmer's leadership, we went from our worst defeat to one of the best victories in our history. Keir put Labour back in a position to change people's lives, and that is what we have been doing these last 2 years. I said we hadn't been good enough. I told people what I would do to fix it. You know what? People started to listen again. They gave us a fair hearing, as the great British public always do. And then another chance. But let's be honest, everybody, this is a last chance to change, and we must take it together, united together. I mean it when I say all places. I will be a leader for the North, the South, the East and the West, for Scotland, Wales and for Northern Ireland. Yes, the North of England has given me so much, everything, in fact. And in return, I have sought to give it the strongest voice I could. That was my job. But now I do the same for everywhere. Because I see the same challenges everywhere I look. The same challenges can be found in the southwest as the northwest, or in East Anglia as the northeast. And this is the moment to speak for all parts of the country and unite people in a common cause.
Well, let's talk to Lucy, shall we? Right, that's it. He's leader of the Labour Party. He's going to be Prime Minister on Monday. What do you think we learnt today about what an Andy Burnham Prime Minister is going to be like?
I think instead of learning anything new, what we had was a very clear effort from Andy Burnham to quiet some of the critics and some of the concerns that he's had from really his own, or soon to be, his own backbenchers. So a couple of themes really came through. The one, him really responding to this criticism that he is a man, purely for the North, a man from Manchester who doesn't understand the rest of the UK. Well, he said a number of times, even, really, at one point saying, I love every part of the UK. I'm going to be a Prime Minister for the North, the South, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland. Also stressing, and again, nothing new, we've heard this before from Andy Burnham, but insisting that this is a party that's going to return to core Labour values. He did pay tribute to Keir Starmer. He said that, there's been improvements in the NHS. Keir Starmer just a few days ago brought back the Hillsborough Law, for example. But he wasn't shy in saying that, places that have voted Labour for years and years and years, for generations, have felt let down by Labour, and I am going to effectively correct that. So there are a couple of things there. Like you say, Sam Coates mentioned that there. It was kind of high on vibes, really, and short on policy. Andy Burnham and his team will know that he absolutely needs to make a number of policy announcements, because we are kind of living in a vacuum now. We can't keep talking about this rhetoric.
Yeah, exactly. We need to find something out. As we've been speaking, Lucy, just got some pictures in from number 10, and I have to say, this really illustrates the brutal nature of politics. Yeah. These are the moving vans, right? These are the removal vans that are now in Downing Street, gearing up for the change of Prime Minister. Because, look, you know, it's not just a transition of power. You have to pack your stuff up in boxes. It's your family's, you know, the plates, your clothes, all the stuff. Put them in the removal van, and you've got to move out, because on Monday, Keir Starmer's going to see the King and resign.
I mean, this whole, you know, the past few months really have shown bare the brutal nature of politics, the way in which a Prime Minister, if he doesn't have the support of his backbenchers, they can mobilise and they can move very, very quickly. That is absolutely what we've seen. I mean, what I would say about Keir Starmer, he mentioned in the interview that he did with Beth Rigby for us from Ukraine, that it is a really difficult decision to effectively end your political career. That is what he's done, even though he'll stay as an MP, you know, he's no longer Prime Minister. There is a part of me that wonders if, now that he's made that decision, and we've seen him in that interview be quite vulnerable and be quite open, maybe he's quite happy to get out of there now. Maybe he thinks... I mean, I think that's probably a little bit, that's a bit of a too simple analysis. It must have been a very difficult decision, but...
I imagine there's a relief that comes with making the decision, right? Because it felt to me like he really tried to fight, you know. Even after those difficult local election results, he came out, he's in it for the long haul. He tried to stop, you know, Burnham kind of running at Gorton. He did everything he could to stay on, but then it became inevitable. And actually, he did make the decision, and I think you have to give him a bit of credit for how he's played it since then, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think history will be perhaps much kinder to Keir Starmer than some of his own MPs have. And I think, you know, he's spent his last few days as Prime Minister and leader of the Labour Party in Ukraine, and I don't think that's a coincidence. You know, I think Keir Starmer wants his legacy to be that he, you know, he was successful on the world stage, that he forged strong relationships when maybe previously they'd been weakened under different leaders. So I think he'll probably leave and be, in hindsight, fairly proud of his legacy. But like you say, you know, that image there of the moving van, you know, politics doesn't give you any time to kind of grieve what you might be losing, and it's pretty brutal, isn't it?
Yeah.
And Andy Burnham, bags are probably already packed to go to Downing Street, aren't they?
Exactly. And also, you know, you're talking there about Keir Starmer and what he's proud of, and it does feel like we're into a very different premiership, because Andy Burnham is talking about the regions of the UK. He's not talking about the international stage. He feels to me to be a politician that is much more domestically driven.
I mean, there wasn't anything in his speech, actually, was there, about defence, about foreign policy.
No, he's domestically focused.
He is domestically focused. And actually, you know, maybe there is some merit in that, because I think a lot of people felt under Keir Starmer that he delegated a lot of the domestic stuff and he focused on international. Actually, he has even said himself that anybody that tries to separate the two is wrong. They are so intrinsically linked, and any leader should make a point of that. Well, Andy Burnham isn't. Andy Burnham is saying, I'm here to focus on you and the things that you want: cost of living, better transport, you know, better housing, more of it, for example. But again, none of this can last forever. And at the moment, they are in this kind of honeymoon period. A lot of journalists in Westminster are saying that he isn't being scrutinised enough. But I kind of think that at the moment, you know, from a strategy, from his team, it probably makes sense to kind of keep him, you know, driving the agenda. He, you know, we are still covering this, and, you know, and all of the front pages will be about Andy Burnham tomorrow, no doubt. So he's getting away with it for now, but there is a vacuum, and if he doesn't fill it with policy, there will be questions about his mandate, about how accountable he is, how we can hold him to account. So, yeah, he is going to have to come out with some policy announcements. And then, of course, you know, it comes to his first meeting with Donald Trump, for example, what he does with foreign policy. All of it at the moment isn't happening, so he can fill the space as he is. But this is a leader that has a huge in-tray and some really, really important relationships that he needs to take over from Keir Starmer.
Lucy, thanks very much. Well, Lord Blunkett was one of the people who was name-checked in the speech by Andy Burnham. It was quite an emotional moment, actually, I think, when Andy Burnham picked him out of the crowd, talked about how he'd been a mentor. Lord Blunkett, of course, someone really forged in Sheffield, as Andy Burnham was forged in Manchester. They talked about the footballing rivalry there with Everton and Sheffield Wednesday. And Sam Coates caught up with him just before the speech. This is what he said.
You can feel the energy, the drive, the electricity, the optimism about being able in the next 2.5 years to turn around the country, and by doing that to turn around the Labour Party and the chance of getting a second term. And if Andy is to do the kind of things he wants to do and are absolutely critical for our future, he will need that second term. So there's an enormous amount riding on the next few months and years in order to be able to get this right.
Some of those who work for Andy Burnham described his politics as Blunketism. Do you think that's fair? Is he your kind of politician?
It's a great compliment, but he is his own man. It's 25 years nearly since he worked with me in the Home Office. He's learnt a lot since then, so have I, and he will carry through his policies. The one thing that does unite us is firstly a belief in family and community, a communitarianism that says things can only be built from the bottom up and not just the top down. And secondly, you need people with you. We need people in their own jobs, their own lives, to feel that they can make a contribution and make a difference. Otherwise, it's always turning to government, and government so often disappoint. So this is an endeavour for the country, for business, for community, for individuals to say, we want a better Britain, then all of us need to play our part in it.
Final question. He's campaigned up until this point almost entirely on vibes, not facts, not specific promises. Does that worry you at all?
Well, I'm pleased he hasn't, because I want him to get across the direction, the feeling, the ambition that we need. Now is the time to build on the existing manifesto, which is still in place, and without breaking manifesto commitments, to be able to expand and develop that in a way that reaches people who are currently either turned off politics altogether or are despairing of the Labour Party. All of that, Andy Burnham is up for turning round.
David Blunkett there, Lord David Blunkett, talking to Sam Coates. Well, the one thing we know, of course, about Andy Burnham is that he believes in devolution. He thinks that is the key to getting growth across the country. Joining us now to discuss that is Oliver Coppard, who's the Mayor of South Yorkshire. Great to have you with us. What did you make of Andy Burnham's speech?
Well, firstly, good to see so many sort of South Yorkshire references on the programme, albeit maybe a few too many Sheffield Wednesday fans for my liking. But look, I didn't listen to Andy's speech. I was in the middle of meetings myself, so I haven't heard exactly what he said, but I've obviously seen the headlines. Look, I don't think any of that surprises me or will surprise any of the mayors that were listening to it, because Andy is committed to the whole of the country, albeit through a different prism, which is through local control, more influence over the decisions that are made around you, potentially through mayors, as we've heard, but local authorities as well, because that's, I think, where we've gone wrong. That's the frustration I hear every day from people in South Yorkshire, is decisions are taken somewhere else. And it's not always clear where those decisions are taken, but I think what Andy is saying is we've got to bring decisions back to people, power back to people and back to communities, and that's what the Labour Party is all about.
Can I talk to you about how devolution works in practice? Because you will know this more than anyone, right? Because I think that there is a consensus that it is a good thing that people in the community make better decisions for the community in general. But I guess it depends, it's only as good as the people making those decisions. And if you're giving power to local councils or local mayors, do you think that all local politicians, I guess, are up to it?
No. Probably not, is my understanding. But I think that's the point, isn't it? At the moment, we have a system where kind of no matter who you vote for, things stay the same. Because actually the power is not in your local council, it might not even be with your mayor. Sometimes it's not even with your government. So actually bringing power and control back to people means actually changing how the system works. And I think the frustration Andy's felt, certainly I feel, and maybe what's driven him back to Westminster, is that even when he was trying to get the government to give him power or control as a mayor, the government didn't even necessarily hold that power. So they couldn't give it to him or give it to me or any of the other mayors. So when people feel frustrated, I was just having a conversation with one of our council leaders about grass verges and how they're not mowed properly. Actually, the council leader can't get the private contractor to do the mowing properly. Now, it's a tiny example, but it's exactly what you're talking about, what we're talking about, which is you need good leaders in place, of course, but those good leaders then need to have the powers, the systems to lean on to actually make that change happen on behalf of our communities. And that's where I think the government are about to take a different tack.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing, that I think of a lot from a journalist perspective as well is the scrutiny, because the accountability and the scrutiny of local politicians, I think it's fair to say, has, fallen away with the decline of local media in some of these areas too.
Yeah. Absolutely. Look, far be it from me to talk up journalism, but I do think journalism is hugely important in keeping politicians on the right side of decisions, and you've got to have that scrutiny in place. And in South Yorkshire, I think it's fair to say we haven't got that local media ecosystem in order to do that in the right way. And I think that's probably common across the country because local media hasn't had the support, the revenue, the funding in order to do that. The business model has been fundamentally changed by social media, by Facebook and other things. And therefore, we don't have that same set of scrutiny and accountability that we once had. And I think that is to everybody's detriment, actually, because poorer decisions are taken. Things happen without much scrutiny. The systems that are in place, even here at my combined authority of councillors essentially scrutinising me, they're not paid to do that job. They're volunteers, essentially, has to change. There has to be more scrutiny of big decisions taken in places like this one if we're going to get better decisions, better leadership and better government in this country.
Yeah, it's a really good point, I think. It's a really interesting point as well. What would you like Andy Burnham to focus on as Prime Minister?
South Yorkshire, is that the right answer? I'd like to see him focus on a lot of things. Clearly, he's going to have to prioritise, but I would be surprised if we didn't see a greater focus from Andy on clearly devolution, but through that prism, transport and what we can do about it. So accelerating the drive to a more integrated transport system that is under local control. Certainly more influence locally over things like education, where I know Andy's had a lot of frustration in the past. We all have. Health, where Andy and I were working quite closely together on changes to the health system in South Yorkshire and in Greater Manchester to give us more local control there. And then I think we're bound to see a big focus on things like NEETs, people not in education, employment or training, where Alan Milburn's done so much work recently. So there's clearly no shortage of things to go at. I think it is much more likely to be more domestically focused, as you've just said, than internationally focused, albeit recognising the interplay between the two. But I think Andy is literally likely to spend most of his time focusing on those places like South Yorkshire, Greater Manchester, West Yorkshire, the North East, where he's understood those problems that we face so well.
Great to talk, as always. Oliver Coppard speaking to you as there from Sheffield. We have had a reaction as well from John Swinney, the First Minister of Scotland, leader of the SNP. He has said, congratulations to Andy Burnham on becoming the Labour leader. I'll work constructively with the next Prime Minister to improve the lives of people in Scotland, but that relationship must respect the simple democratic principle that Scotland has the right to decide our future. So I think a pretty clear signal there for what John Swinney is going to be pushing Andy Burnham for, independence for Scotland. You're watching Sky News. Coming up, Andy Burnham delivers his first speech as leader of the Labour Party before he officially becomes Prime Minister on Monday. Coming up next, we're going to talk about who could be in his cabinet. Right, the big question, who is going to be in Andy Burnham's cabinet? Me and Lucy are going to try and give you our best guess. Andy Burnham apparently hasn't made up his mind. This is what he said.
Contrary to what you may keep on reading, I haven't made any decisions yet about who will be in that top team, but I will soon. And when I have, you will see it reflects all parts of our party, all communities, and it will reflect your own place within this great party of ours. A stronger, more united Labour Party lifting up a stronger and more united Britain.
So he hasn't made up his mind. Do you believe him?
I'll be honest, I don't think I do. I'm sure there are a lot of people trying to influence his decision at the very last minute and change it if he has made it. But I don't believe that the thought hasn't crossed his mind.
We're here in front of Shabana because she is the front-runner, do we think, to become Chancellor?
Yes, so we were previously talking about Ed Miliband, but the favourite now does seem to be Shabana Mahmood, if you believe what you're reading in the papers, and it does look like this name is being heavily briefed. And some in the Labour Party, particularly those who have actually backed Andy Burnham from the very beginning, might not be very happy with this choice. But there is an acceptance that maybe she might be backed by the financial markets. She might be a safe choice. I think in the Home Office, she was seen as somebody that is happy to make unpopular decisions. And let's be honest, somebody in the Treasury is going to have to defend some unpopular decisions.
We were talking about Wes Streeting potentially for Chancellor. It's now thought that he's going to be given another role in the Cabinet. And this guy, Ed Miliband as well.
Ed Miliband, yeah, currently Energy Secretary. Again, somebody that for a long time was seen as being Chancellor, because if you want to change the direction of your government, which is what Andy Burnham has said he's going to come in and do, you need somebody quite radical. In the Treasury, Ed Miliband is seen as being that person. But now, real concerns that actually some of his net zero ideas, unions are warning, for example, that could see job losses across the country, fears that actually he might be a little bit too radical to be in that position. So we'll see.
Over my other shoulder, we've got Angela Rayner. I think it is almost certain that she's going to be given some kind of return to Cabinet after she left under Keir Starmer. But the one I want to talk to you about, Lucy, is Lou Haig. Because I feel like a lot of people probably have no idea who this person is, but she's right at the heart of the administration.
Yeah, I've been speaking to people over the past few weeks, few months even, and last year, Lou Haig was one of the key kind of Andy Burnham allies in Westminster, who was effectively trying to plan for this scenario for him to come back to Westminster and be Prime Minister. So there is an element here where it's like, well, she probably feels like she needs rewarding for that. She was behind him in his Makerfield by-election speech when he won that, thanking Lou Haig among a number of other quite powerful women in the Labour Party. So she is widely expected to be seen in one of those top jobs. What it is, we don't really know.
We've got Yvette Cooper here. Again, kind of safe pair of hands. Some people are even saying she could be like a unifying pick for Chancellor, although it feels like the kind of chatter in Westminster is now Shabana Mahmood. And then we've also got Lisa Nandy, who is the MP for Wigan. Again, someone who's been, campaigning along Andy Burnham for a while.
Yeah, another close... Somebody who was, on the rounds in interviews with you, Sophie, loyal to Keir Starmer, but a neighbour of Andy Burnham, Andy Burnham in the Makerfield seat, Lisa Nandy in Wigan. She, again, will want to be rewarded with a senior role. At the moment, Culture Secretary, maybe we'll see her promoted to something else. But actually, there aren't that many roles to move people around into. It's hard to see how everybody will fit in.
Yeah, so talking about that, we've talked so far about the people who are likely to get a job. Now we're going to bring in people who there have been question marks
get booted out.
over. You might get booted out, or we think that Jonathan Reynolds probably is going to get, some kind of promotion, maybe back to business secretary.
Yeah, he was chief whip, so effectively, you might not recognise him from that role, but that's because it's a very behind-the-scenes role, telling MPs effectively, the way that the government wants them to be voting on things. A very difficult job under Keir Starmer's government.
I don't understand this, Lucy. I don't know what you think. David Miliband, really?
I don't understand it, and there was also a kind of a question mark over how many Milibands you can have in government when, there are, for example, there are women that should be promoted into that job as well. That's a question. That's a kind of a criticism of Keir Starmer's government, that it was a bit of a boys' club. They've always rejected that, but I think bringing in two Milibands
Yeah, I mean,
would be an unpopular decision for some in the party.
I feel like that's when the Westminster bubble lost their minds, when we were thinking, yeah, we're going to have Ed as Chancellor and David.
Let's bring back everybody from the past when we've got a parliamentary Labour Party of more than 400 people who already feel like they haven't been valued very much. So, yeah.
We should do these two together. So we've got Darren Jones here and we've got David Lammy here. So these are both allies of Keir Starmer. And I guess this is a question, what does Andy Burnham do with people who've been loyal to Keir Starmer?
Yeah. Especially those who are actually seen as being quite effective. So I'm going to go... So Darren Jones, Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister under Keir Starmer, seen as a really good communicator. But like you say, is he too much of the same? Does Andy Burnham need to get rid of Darren Jones to show that he is actually changing his strategy? But there is also something to be said for bringing in somebody who has the support of a fair chunk of the Parliamentary Labour Party, people who felt that Keir Starmer was treated really unfairly. It might not be a bad decision to keep somebody like Darren Jones in to show that you're also listening to people who have a strong track record.
And then we've got John Healey, and this is an interesting one because John Healey, of course, resigned as Defence Secretary because he didn't think Keir Starmer was spending enough money on defence. That's effectively it, right? Could he come back as Defence Secretary?
He could come back as Defence Secretary. I mean, Dan Jarvis, who is in the role at the moment, hasn't been there for long, but has been pitching strongly to stay in that role. But I was speaking to, not to add to the speculation, but I will because there's so much of it, but I was speaking to somebody that you could say is very close to the Burnham team, actually floated John Healey's name as Foreign Secretary. I do think that if you're going to bring John Healey back, it has to be in one of the great offices of state. It has to be in a pretty senior job, doesn't it?
You can't give him DEFRA, basically.
You can't give him DEFRA, not to cause offence to DEFRA, an important job. But yeah, John Healey is widely respected in the party. Obviously, had the defence job. Yeah, I think it's probably quite likely that he might come back.
And then if we whiz over this title, I'm going to stand here.
Shall I go this side?
We've got Rachel Reeves and we've got Bridget Phillipson. Again, key allies of Keir Starmer. They both had really big roles in his administration. What do we think is going to happen to them?
Bridget Phillips, well, both really want to keep their jobs. I think Rachel Reeves has probably accepted that she is not going to stay in that role of Chancellor. Bridget Phillips, I think there's a bit of a question mark over. She certainly wants to keep her job. And I would say over the past few weeks has been doing it in a way that Andy Burnham will probably appreciate. You know, she hasn't been heavily briefing that she would want to keep the job. You know, she talks about send reform, for example, something that is really difficult to achieve. She has started it. She says she wants to finish it. What about Rachel Reeves? What do you think? Do you think she could take another job?
So, I interviewed Rachel Reeves when it became pretty clear, I think, that she was not going to keep that job. I think the difficulty she has, because I have heard rumours that they've been, like, sounding her out for other jobs, I just don't think they're going to give her something big enough to stay in Cabinet. So my gut is that even if they do offer her something, you know, not that great, she might just step back for a bit.
I also think the problem with some of the people who have been so loyal to Keir Starmer, these two here, so ingrained in the Keir... You know, they were also, remember, before Labour was in government, they were in opposition in these roles. They are so deeply associated with Keir Starmer's government. To keep them, I think people would question, well, how much change are we really going to see?
And we're talking about Bridget Phillipson, right? And you're right, she's made a decent case for staying. She represents a part of the country, you know, the kind of northeast that Andy Burnham, I think, will have a lot of respect for. But there's a lot of people who he could put in education. Like Wes Streeting, for example, he's got to find a place for
Lucy Powell. Her name has been floated quite a lot for education.
Yeah, there's only so many jobs to go around, and I guess this is the problem, right? It always sounds like it's going to be really fun picking your cabinet, but my goodness, you're going to make a few enemies on the backbenches, aren't you?
But that's the point as well, isn't it? At the moment, Andy Burnham is able to kind of pump out this rhetoric that everything's going to be great, hope, and also he keeps saying, I'm going to unite the Labour Party. We see such a split Labour Party, especially over the past few months, with you know, with them all fighting effectively about who should become the next leader. He isn't going to please everybody. He's not going to please everybody outside of Westminster, across the country. He's also not going to please all of these people. It's impossible.
Yeah, Lucy, really, really interesting to get your analysis. As always, coming up, we're going to have more coverage of the new leader of the Labour Party, Andy Burnham, the man who says he is now ready to become Prime Minister on Monday. Hello. We're live from Westminster on the day that Andy Burnham is officially made leader of the Labour Party. On Monday, he's going to become Prime Minister, taking the keys to number 10 away from Keir Starmer as we say farewell to yet another Prime Minister. A little hug there from his wife as he delivered a speech vowing to give people hope again. Andy Burnham also paid tribute to the former Labour administration, the Keir Starmer administration, but he was critical about Labour and other parties over decades taking power away from the regions and failing those very places that forged the Labour movement. Let's bring in our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates. Sam was at the event today. What did you make of it?
Well, there were 2 or 3 really big things that Andy Burnham did. The first was that he promised to introduce the biggest change for 40 years. Now, I'm going to be blunt, Sophie, we're just going to have to wait and see whether that's actually true, whether what he does lives up to that kind of rhetoric, because, my goodness, he claims to be aiming high. And there is so little that we know about the specifics of what he will do that, to be blunt, many, even in the Labour Party, have been kept guessing. It was interesting, the second thing that really struck me is he was making promises that so far I think he has struggled to keep. So he said that he would end the factionalism in the Labour Party. He said he would end the culture of briefing in the Labour Party. Well, people only have to look at the newspapers for the last couple of days. The briefing war around who should be Chancellor, should it be Shabana Mahmood, should it be Ed Miliband, some really very strongly held views on that side, on both sides to that question. Anonymous quotes aplenty across all bits of the media and indeed dropping into my WhatsApps from Labour MPs, getting quite heated. So that's quite a challenge as well. And the third thing looked like a response to a question that is being asked more in private than in public by Labour MPs, which is, does he have a plan? And to that, Andy Burnham used his speech today emphatically to say, yes, I do, I have a plan. But clearly, he was just not going to tell very much of it to us. Now, we're going to have to wait till Monday when he becomes Prime Minister.
Well, we certainly are, Sam. You, of course, have been speaking to various MPs, various supporters of Andy Burnham. I think we can have a little listen to Dawn Butler, one of the MPs that you caught up with earlier. Let's listen.
Keir has left the country in a better place than when he found it. Now what we're doing is renewing, reinvigorating the Labour Party, ensuring that we're going out to the country and to London to make sure we start building that trust, building that ambition with enthusiasm and hope and optimism. And that at the moment is what's lacking. So all we're doing is building in what's lacking.
What does Andy Burnham have that Keir Starmer didn't?
He's got the hope and the energy, and he's not ashamed of Labour's values, core Labour values. He has said he will be unashamedly Labour. And for part of the Labour government, it was almost like there was this conflict, like people wouldn't buy in to what Labour is about. But what we found is, and if you look at all the polling, what it said is people want to vote Labour, but we have to give them a reason to vote Labour. And I think if you take the Macclesfield election, where we lost all of our Labour councillors to reform, within 6 weeks, Andy came in and reversed that. So I think that shows you what can happen when we give people something to vote for.
We don't know many specifics, but it does look as if Shabana Mahmood might be the Chancellor. Are you keen on that?
What have you been reading? You've been reading all these little tidbits.
Are you keen on Shabana Mahmood as Chancellor?
We have to wait until probably the weekend. You might have your ear to the door. I don't know where he's going to be doing the reshuffle.
But would you be keen on Shabana Mahmood as Chancellor?
What I would be keen on is actually Andy needs to come in and be the change that he's spoken about. And that change does mean that you don't just rearrange people in the deck chairs. So I'd like to see some change.
I'm not hearing enthusiasm for Shabana Mahmood as Chancellor.
Look, my enthusiasm is for Andy to be the Prime Minister and for us to have that energy and that hope and optimism. And you get that. Look, we've got a lot of good people in the party. We've got a lot of good people who could be Chancellor, who's got an economic background. So there's lots of positions, and I want to see Andy pick the right people for the right job.
Oh, Sam, that response on the idea of Shabana Mahmood as Chancellor said such a lot. I mean, I spoke to Andy Burnham earlier this hour as well, and he was very clear Ed Miliband should be Chancellor. I mean, we can already see, you know, the battle lines being drawn over this chancellorship role.
Absolutely. What was it? Point 3 of Andy Burnham's speech. I'm going to end the factionalism, end the briefings. Doesn't seem like we've done that this afternoon. You heard Dawn Butler there refusing to say Shabana Mahmood would be a good chancellor 5 times, was it? And then saying lots of people would be a good chancellor. You can't end factionalism in political parties. They're broad churches where completely legitimately different people believe different things. And simply by being a nice person doesn't, you know, crater over the cracks. And if there was a limitation to what we've seen so far from Andy Burnham, it's high on rhetoric but short on trade-offs, because ultimately you have to argue for difficult decisions and come down on one side or another. Let me give you one example. Andy Burnham keeps talking about the importance of social care. He's a subject that he's been very close to for, 16 years. But is he going to fund it? And if so, how? Or is he just going to kick it off to the Louise Casey review, which is already underway, as a senior official that we've had that's been looking at this for some time? If it's the latter, can he credibly say that he's got a plan? We just don't know, which is why we keep hammering on the question of who and what, because it is one thing to be the people's prime minister, which Andy Burnham very clearly says he wants to be, but it's another to understand what he does with that power and whether or not the soaring rhetoric, the biggest change in 40 years, the ending of division and governing for every corner of the country, that panacea vision actually turns out to be something less exciting in practice.
Sam can see the chairs being rearranged behind you. Things move on very, very quickly, don't they? We're going to leave you there. Always good to speak to you. Thank you very much. Sam Coates there from the event in central London that saw Andy Burnham become the new leader of the Labour Party. And on Monday, he will officially become the Prime Minister. You're watching Sky News. Coming up next, we are going to be talking more about what to expect from the new Prime Minister, Andy Burnham.
Opening hours of the war on Iran, a primary school was hit by a missile designed to blow up military bunkers.
What I've seen, that was done by Iran.
We've been investigating.
Can you explain why you cannot reveal what happened in Minab?
Denial, denial. And we've travelled to Minab. Grave after grave is overwhelming to gather evidence and talk to victims.
I just have a question, why?
An interview that lasted nearly 5 minutes. We talked about Prime Minister Starmer. We talked about the special relationship with who he said. It was a jam-packed interview. I'll tell you what he told me, and I'll explain why you can't hear the call.
I'm Mark Stone, and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Have you seen what Donald Trump's been up to? In the Rose Garden, in the East Wing.
100 days in and back with the grassroots of this MAGA movement.
It feels a little bit like he's a king, not a president.
He is a king.
I've witnessed the remarkable passion for politics here, but the anger too. Everything in America feels kind of torn in two right now, and it has been an intense few weeks for Minneapolis.
How many more people have to die?
This is not America.
A large and growing protest movement. They're vocal and they're angry.
Are these immigration rates?
Unbelievable we've come to this.
We just arrived in Doha, just ahead of President Trump, and look at that. The horse-backed military and beyond them, the skyline of a city transformed.
There seems to be some sort of a shooting, what appear to be shots fired at the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
What do America's Christian faithful make of the president's pop at the Pope?
The ones that vote for him are going to vote for him through thick and thin.
Before anybody criticizes the Pope, they need to think more than twice.
Mark Stone from Sky News. Will you stop buying Russian energy? Is there any assurance for Palestinian self-determination? Of course. It's a big shift by President Trump.
This post of Trump, it's a big shift. It's a big shift. It's very positive.
Sky News, the full story first.
Hello again. Well, I can't even talk. Right, Lucy McDade, exactly. Lucy McDade is here, our political correspondent. We knew it was going to happen, But it is still quite a moment.
Yeah.
Andy Burnham is now officially the leader of the Labour Party, and on Monday, he is going to become Prime Minister. I guess my question is, how much do you think he's going to change from Keir Starmer?
Well, the question is, how much can he change from Keir Starmer? Because the in-tray for Andy Burnham is massive, the same as it was for Keir Starmer. So he's kind of suggesting that he's going to do a number of really quite radical things, because one of the complaints from a lot of Labour MPs why they wanted to replace a leader is because they felt that the politics wasn't radical enough, it wasn't bold enough. Andy Burnham saying in his speech today that he's going to be confident, he's going to be bold, he's going to be all of these things that these Labour MPs are asking for. But how bold can he be when the public finances, for example, are still incredibly strained, when in the Labour manifesto, they made a number of promises on tax, not to raise national insurance, VAT or income tax. That, was seen to really kind of to restrict what they could do. Andy Burnham says that he's going to, in large part, stick to the Labour manifesto. So how much can he really do? How much can he achieve? So therefore, how different can he be from Keir Starmer? I don't know, we will see, but I think it's difficult to see how he will be that different.
Yeah, and like you said, the mandate question is really key, isn't it? Because if you stray too far from the manifesto that got all those Labour MPs elected, then those calls for another election, a new mandate, will grow.
I think he will be different, sorry, just to say, I think he will be different in a communications perspective.
Yeah.
And I think that is important, and we shouldn't underestimate how important that is. Again, not just for members of the public who might feel really disenfranchised, disillusioned with politics. Andy Burnham might certainly help improve the Labour brand. I think it will also appease a lot of Labour MPs who felt that Keir Starmer really struggled to get their messages through properly, but it only goes so far.
Talking about communications, one of the real things that Andy Burnham emphasised in his speech today was his connection with normal people, working people, particularly those people outside of London and the South East. And it was really exemplified when he picked out 3 mentors in the crowd. Just listen to what he said about Lord Blunkett.
I was his parliamentary private secretary in my first experience of the front bench, but he has been the truest mentor to me in the decades since, and it's just wonderful to be with you, Lord Blunkett, David, on this special day.
We're talking about the difference between Andy Burnham and Keir Starmer, and I think this is another difference. He has been in the Labour Party for decades, right? And Keir Starmer was a newbie, really,
yeah,
which was in some ways was a positive, but also I think that it perhaps meant that he didn't have the political chops, the political nous to understand how this movement works.
Yeah, so many people said about Keir Starmer that they believed, well, they think he's a really good person, but that he just wasn't a politician. He was a former director of public prosecutions. He came in 2015 and then rose very, very quickly through the ranks to become Prime Minister. And you look at Andy Burnham, and I think that decision there to point out his political mentors, his political allies, and actually it was at that point in his speech that I felt it got quite emotional, and it felt that for a lot of people in the room, bearing in mind that those 3 individuals, David Blunkett, Margaret Beckett and Neil Kinnock, all represent different parts of the UK as well, it felt that this was him saying to those people, I'm going to win back your parts of the country. Neil Kinnock, for example, before the Senedd elections in May, I was in Tredegar, where Neil Kinnock was born, actually, and speaking to Labour voters, and there was this feeling there that generations and generations of loyalty to Labour had been lost, and that was catastrophic for the party. So I think Andy Burnham is trying to say, I am going to win back these places. But again, it's rhetoric, it's vibes, it's positive energy at the moment. How easy is that for him to do? I think it will be very, very challenging. But he has what Keir Starmer hadn't, in the sense that he has those legends of the party who have mentored him, who've supported him, who are sat there today saying, you have my backing. Well, he might not have a mandate from voters. He clearly does have a mandate in the party.
Yeah, that's completely right. Prediction for Chancellor? What do you reckon?
Oh, do you know what? I'm
screwing you over here.
What a mean question. I shouldn't say this as a political journalist. I really struggle to have an appetite for the speculation because the truth is, I think I could say a name now and actually I could just be pulling it out of thin air. However, I think when you look at what's been briefed, bearing in mind Andy Burnham was saying briefing is going to come to an end under him, but if you read the papers just today, I mean, Shabana Mahmood's name hasn't come from anywhere. I think that some Labour MPs will really hope that he takes a bold choice and he chooses Ed Miliband. I think it's becoming increasingly unlikely from what we're reading.
Lucy, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
For me, the moment to really reflect on in Andy Burnham's speech is who did he pick out? Or which regions does he pick out? Welsh Valleys, Neil Kinnock, Derby, Margaret Beckett, Sheffield, David Bunkett. That is going to be the heart of how he succeeds as Prime Minister, if he's going to really reindustrialise some of those regions. That's a challenge he's set himself. It's a tall order. We'll find out more on Monday when he becomes Prime Minister.